Hello and welcome to a truly special edition of 90 Minutes Africa. My name is Okey Ndibe. Today is my pleasure to stand in for the usual host of the show, Rudolph Okonkwo. And indeed, in what is going to be a monumental reversal of roles, Rudolph has agreed to come on his show as the guest, and I will be the host, and I will be moderating the conversation with Rudolph. So it's a delight to do this, and without much ado, I'd like to invite you, Rudolph Okonkwo, to please join the show and welcome.
Just waiting. This is interesting. So
yes,
thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, there's been a conversation between Rudolph and me that's been going on for, I think, more than a year now since my last appearance on the show as a guest. And Rudolph has wanted me to come back. And for all kinds of reasons, I have not been able to come back. And part of, uh, in recent times, I've given Rudolph the very sound reason that, in a sense, I've come to the conclusion that I don't understand Nigeria anymore. So I feel incompetent to pronounce on issues pertaining to Nigeria. And Rudolph has come up with different um, suggestions, that we could talk about academia. Both of us are teachers at the college level, that we could talk about our experiences teaching in America. And in my case, I've also been a professor for a year in Nigeria as a Fulbright scholar at the University of Lagos. So he wanted me to come on and sort of have a conversation about the variety of experiences in the different locations where I have been a professor. That conversation will come up at some point, but I felt that there are actually compelling reasons to, as it were, put Rudolph on the hot seat. I'd like to tease out for our audience this really, for me, spectacular phenomenon called Rudolph Okonkwo, or as many of his fans know him, Dr. Damages. So Dr. Damages is a real pleasure for me to be in this unfamiliar place and for you to be in your unfamiliar seat as a guest. So welcome.
Thank you. Let me explain that I wanted to have a conversation with Okey the way Nikki Giovanni had a conversation with James Brown.
And that will happen at some other date, not today.
That was all I wanted to do. I don't know, but go
that
ahead.
will happen. That will happen. So we'll see how this works out. And at some future date, maybe in a few years, we'll have the Nikki Giovanni James Baldwin conversation. Okay, so so let me begin with this. Your show has become, for many of us, almost an addictive. It's not almost. It's become an addictive treat for Nigerians. So I'd like to begin by by asking you, what was at the back of your mind when you conceived this show, 90 Minutes Africa?
Oh, yeah, thank you. It wasn't just me. It was Chido Onoma. We came together and we said we would like to have an interview program where we will give intellectuals, newsmakers, um, politicians, artists, musicians, different people opportunity to come on and talk. Unlike what they get when they go to Nigerian TV or African TV stations, or anywhere in the world really, where they give you just 15 minutes or best 30 minutes. We said we will give 90 minutes. And the idea was also that we talk to the guest for an hour and then invite our audience to join in the conversation. You know, sometimes the audience, they have the better questions
Yes.
than we have. So that was the idea that we had, and we started. Um, you know,
Yes, because I remember that, so thank you for bringing in the fact that you actually had a partner
yes.
who, with you, became the Jean provocateur for this really thrilling, sometimes disturbing show, in terms of um, the kind of heat that it generates.
I'm sweating here.
You can imagine.
I'm sweating here.
Yes. So, um, so Chido Anoma, I remember that in the first um, months after they take up the program, that both of you co-hosted the program. So I know the story sort of tangentially, but could you speak about how it came about that Chido stopped being a regular as a host on the program?
Oh, yeah. Essentially, what happened was along the way, he started writing a book, and we are still waiting for him to finish. You know how these things are.
Yes.
But also he has a full time job. He runs a nonprofit, so he's busy. So this was an additional burden. But the book was what made him take a leave of absence to
Mhm.
finish the book.
So are you expecting that at some point he'll return?
I may fire him.
Well, we're going to get into that because
I'm-
in about a month, we're going to get back in the White House somebody who is famous for saying to somebody, to people,
You're
"You're
fired.
fired." So, but we'll get to
Yeah,
Trump
yeah.
a bit
No,
later.
it,
Yes.
I haven't discussed with him. You know, every week people now make fun of me because every week we say that my co-host Chido Onoma is on assignment, and
Yeah.
people make fun of him. He's always on assignment. You
Yes.
know, when is he
Yes.
coming back?
Yes.
Um, we
No.
haven't discussed that. You
Yeah,
know,
I do know that Chido, who is also a friend, even though we haven't spoken in a while, Chido is quite busy. But all of us are really, really busy, right? I know that you wear different caps. You teach at a college, and you have other um, um,
engagements
engagements,
and entanglements,
entanglements.
not just
Yes,
engagements,
not to say,
entanglements.
not to go to the kind of errands that our spouses will send us on, which always take priority, you know. But let me ask. So you had this conception when you started the show, um, and of course it exploded. So initially you called it 90-minute Africa because it was projected that you would interview a guest for an hour, that you would bring in a live audience to bring in questions and remarks and so on. I remember the first time I was on the show, you had told me that it was going to be an hour and a half. I think I ended up being there for more than 3 hours, perhaps.
I think
uh,
you were the one that said that's the stage
Precisely.
for.
So I exploded this whole thing, and I think we did 3.5, if not close to 4 hours. And I thought it was a scandal. I thought that people were going to protest and say, "No, this is an egregious redefinition of an hour and a half, right? 90 minutes." But then I have. I'm aware of episodes that went on for for
8 hours,
8 hours and
10
so on,
hours. Yeah, we
and ten
had
hours.
Prince
So
Adebayo.
yes, yeah, the president, that's the presidential candidate,
Yeah,
right? Who I
we,
because
we
I
called it
remember
we called it
watching.
we
I
called it 100 questions in
Yes,
100 hours.
yes, I remember watching that show, and I will go off on an errand and come back, and the
And it's
guy was
still on.
still there, and I went off again and came back, and it was still there. So it just blew my mind. So can you speak to clearly, because what's at play is that your show has become addictive. And given the colossal disappointment that many Nigerians feel about their country, how do you account for the fact that Nigerians actually enjoy talking about this country that brings them so much pain, as it were?
Yeah, it's been described in so many ways. For most of them, it's an opportunity for them to vent. It's also an opportunity to listen to people with different viewpoints, which is not very popular and common.
Mm-hmm.
Most people now bring around themselves people who agree with them, not people who disagree with them. But when you come on the show, you are going to see people who will disagree with you. So a lot of people like that idea. They have opportunity to challenge opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And what has happened is that our guests, when they come on, they know they have the time. They have the time to expand on the ideas, and some of them enjoy taking on the audience who will come
Mm-hmm.
on to ask them questions, pointed questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes I find it hard. I try to tell the guests to end it, that we have to go. I'm the one that is interested in going. They don't want to. They say let them talk,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's amazing. So it gives opportunity to people who are um, constrained by the time that regular TV will give them. So
Mm-hmm.
they enjoy it, and our people
Mm-hmm.
enjoy coming on and having opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
talk to people. They sometimes they only see them on TV.
Mm-hmm. So, what have you learned as a person? Of course, this is your show, and so you have a certain level of intimacy with what's going on. Have you had time to sort of step back and look at the run of the show? I think that sometime early next year will be at the third anniversary of the show. When is the third anniversary?
It should be
Exactly.
March, sometime in March. I
Okay,
think
sometime in
11th.
March.
Yeah.
So 3 years, almost 3 years is a very respectable run for a show like this one. So have you had the occasion to step back and look at what have you learned about our country, about this space that we call Nigeria? What are some of the lessons that you picked up from engaging with your guests as well as the larger body of interlocutors who joined the show?
Yeah. I think the first thing is we think that we talk a lot, and we have conversations, but I don't think we have enough of that conversations. So that's one,
Mhm,
because I see people come up and say certain things that I would think that if they've been part of the conversation going on across the country, they wouldn't say that.
mhm,
Um, Something that an idea that has been put out and been dismissed,
mhm,
something that people you can say at a different average level of engagement in Nigeria will have concluded that this is not true or not acceptable.
mhm,
But people still make those statements when they come on the show. So it tells me that the conversations are not happening the way they should, maybe, or across the board the way you think they are happening.
mhm,
Also, I noticed something that everybody always, if you follow Nigeria the way we follow it, that the solutions and the ideas are always there. The issue is about implementation.
mhm,
So I see smart people come on the show. At the end, one of the interesting things we do at the end is when the guest is out, we do a review of what happened, feedback, what people are taking away from the conversation. And
mhm,
you find that a lot of people will feel like, why is this person not the one running the country? Why is this person not the governor? Why is this
mhm,
person? So we have people, we have talents, but they just don't know, or there is no way for them to get to the front
mhm,
of the seat and to run things. So they remain armchair critics, throwing out ideas that nobody's really interested in.
Let me pause you there because I know you have a lot more to say, but I'd like to follow up with questions related to the insights that you've offered. Um, One is that you said that perhaps we don't have enough conversations. And yet, as you know, I wrote a weekly column on Nigerian politics for close to 20 years. I think it was 18 years. Um, and then broke off and came back. And only recently, early this year or middle of this year, I decided to take a long sabbatical from writing about Nigeria. And I remember that a predictable refrain that one gets from Nigerians when, in the many years that I wrote a weekly column, was Nigerians would say, "Hey, um, uh, we have enough of talking, as it were, you know. So it's the doing." Okay. Um, so it struck me as uh, particularly interesting that you said we don't talk enough. We haven't talked enough. We don't talk enough about our problems. Could you spend some time sort of breaking that down? What does it mean? Because again, if you've been in any space with Nigerians, whether you go to a Nigerian bar, a Nigerian restaurant, a Nigerian birthday party, a Nigerian church, politics quickly percolates to the fore, and so Nigerians talk a lot about the issues pressing on their lives in Nigeria. So I'd like to hear some more about this idea that we don't talk enough.
I'll give you an example of what I mean. So for 3 years, we've done this. And
Mhm,
one of the things we noticed is that there are some segments of the population that are not involved in the conversation.
mhm,
So a good example, people from the north.
mhm,
We've been trying to figure out why is it that they don't feel comfortable in joining our conversation. There are some who do join, but not a lot.
mhm,
You can remove that segment of the society and hope to accomplish something for the whole nation.
mhm,
So there's no conversation that is going across every segment. Women are not involved as much as we would like them to be involved. And you
mhm,
can't build a nation,
mhm,
you can't
mhm,
reform a nation if it's only men that are having a conversation about what should be done.
mhm,
So, and then of course, the people who are involved in the conversation, you find out that the line of division is so wide, and there are no people in the middle who are trying to get the ideas from different sections and
mhm,
bring it together and
mhm,
then formulate what should be done next. So that is that those parts of typical conversation that could lead to change, they are
mhm,
not happening.
mhm,
So the fact that we are shouting and abusing each other
mhm,
does not it's not the whole range of what
mhm,
the conversation should be.
mhm,
One is the people who should be involved. Everybody is not involved in that conversation, and there are no people to follow up
mhm,
from just laying out the issues. Sometimes we throw out the solutions, but
mhm.
there's no follow up.
Yes.
So yeah, so for you to achieve anything, you have to take care of those aspects.
Wonderful. So another follow-up that I'd like to make relates to the point that you made that Nigeria is a country that's rich in talent, okay, and that often those who appear as guests in your show elicit the response from the audience that these are the kinds of people who should be running the country. And in the years that I've written about Nigeria, this is a particular paradox that I've noted that in every sector of human endeavor, whether you're talking about medicine, you're talking about literature, academia, engineering, and so on, that you find Nigerians who are not only present, but often stand out, okay, in the world on a global level. And yet, when we come to the critical sector of the leadership of the country, the leadership of the different states, the leadership of the local governments in the country, somehow we seem to choose what I'll call our mediocrities, you see. So, how do you personally account for this paradox? The fact that a country that knows what talent looks like, a country that um, distinguishes itself in other sectors, somehow settles again and again for the most depraved and the most unimpressive and the most mediocre elements when it comes to leadership, political
Oh,
leadership.
yeah, it's very easy to see why it's happening. The one is that I define Nigeria as a failed nation that
Mhm,
works for the people that failed it. So because it works for them,
mhm,
they have no incentive to make that country work. And
mhm,
for the rest, who could not find a way to be part of that, they leave.
mhm,
Most of the successful people we are talking about, most of them
mhm,
are out of the country.
mhm,
So they leave, and by leaving, you leave the space
mhm,
for the same people to dominate.
mhm,
So that makes it very difficult for when you have small elements now. You don't have the critical mass that is needed to effect a change at home.
mhm, mhm,
So that's the first thing that is going on. The second thing is that the people at home, most of them, um, they they don't know. Remember the population of Nigeria, that's 75% of the Nigerian population, they are under 30.
mhm.
So these people did not know Zik, they did not
Yeah.
know Awo, they did not know Tafawa Balewa, So their role models are people that we see that failed that country. I saw a video that I played yesterday on the show
Mhm,
where the president, Tinubu, was going somewhere in Lagos, and the convoy the vehicles were just passing, and this guy on the roadside was just hailing him. This is the greatest man. He
yeah.
is number one, or the
Mhm,
level, different levels.
mhm,
He's not thinking about this is my money that they are
mhm,
wasting. This is why things are not working in this country. He's not thinking that way. So you have a situation where for more than 30 years, you have a generation, majority of the country, they've never seen good, efficient governance. They've never seen things working in the country, and they've accepted that this is how it is.
mhm,
It's more difficult to dig ourselves out of the place we are now
mhm,
than if we had started in the 80s or in
mhm.
the 70s to
Yes.
dig out. So,
Yes, and even so, I must note that even when the Zigs and the Awos and so on were in charge of the country, um, there was a lot of criticism
oh, of
about the
course, of
way,
course, of course.
about the way they ran the country. We haven't had the kind of luck that a country like Malaysia, like Singapore, um, have had in transformative leaders. Of course, people like Awolowo and Zik, even Tafawa Balewa,
Amadu Bello.
Ahmadu Bello, had a kind of intelligence quotient which they could articulate themselves and their vision in a way that our current crop of leaders are absolutely incapable of, right?
Hmm.
So our current leaders would sort of repeat this hackneyed phrase about, I'm here to move the state forward,
Carry everybody along.
carry everybody along, or I'm going to deliver the dividends of democracy, which I think was in Obasanjo's inaugural
Speech.
speech, and everybody thought, oh, this is so brilliant, and so every politician in the country began to talk about delivering the dividends of democracy. So one of the things that I noticed is, yes, I said when Zik and Awo were the central political figures, Ahmadu Bello and Tafawa Balewa and so on, there was even so the sense that the country was far from meeting its potential, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's happened now is that we're falling so cataclysmically that it's almost like a universal given that the one measure of government in Nigeria, but at the federal and state levels, is if they can somehow build some roads, so every governor um, in a state who takes over speaks about how many kilometers of roads he has tarred, you know, um, and Nigerians and the other sort of measure of achievement is to pay salaries, because we came to a point where um, Nigerian governments um, felt the salaries were optional. The payment of salaries became optional. Interestingly, my mother-in-law, who lives with us, has a caregiver who is Ghanaian, and she just started last week. And she was telling us that she and her husband lived somewhere in Oyo State. Her husband, who is a Ghanaian, was a school teacher in a secondary school in Oyo State. And she said they had to leave after 3 years because for 4 months the husband was not paid. And somehow he found his way to America, and then about a year later brought his family. So they've been in America for 20 some years. So that tells you, I mean, how we have settled, but when I went to secondary school, we still had some books in the library. We had meals that were not very good, but were respectable. The last time I visited my high school, it was unrecognizable, despite the fact that they had done my secondary school, which is what we call it in Nigeria, they'd made some changes, but just the quality of the place, they into what I might call the software of the place, the absence of books, the fact that the kids had no access to computers and so on, that the lab was a shambles and so on. So I'm wondering if you can trace sort of the trajectory from when I'm much older than you, but at least when you were growing up, you still saw a vestige of a competent Nigeria, which we didn't know was competent at all, but it's only competent in relation to today, where it's a total breakdown. But can you sort of account for this trajectory where the country goes from some level of competency, which still left a lot to be desired, to the level we have today, which is total chaos and disaster?
Um, when every generation they will always say, look back and say the good old days,
Mm-hmm.
the good old days. I don't think, I don't think um, people today, maybe they do,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't belong to them, their group. I don't think they will say the good old days. I mean, if you look at it, like let's say administration of Buhari and what's going on now,
Mm-hmm.
people will consider the Buhari days as the
The
good.
good old days.
Yeah, yeah, good old.
Yes.
And then, of course, if you think about the Jonathan days,
Mm-hmm.
just on the terms of the exchange rate of the naira and the
Mm-hmm.
dollar and what you can do with your pay, you will call it the good old days. That
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan's days were the good old days. Um, but I think we've gotten to the point where it's difficult for anybody to imagine something worse. I remember when Buhari came in, people were saying that the naira will get to 2,000 naira to a dollar. It was unthinkable that it would
Mm-hmm.
happen.
Mm-hmm.
But Tinubu
We're,
did it.
we're,
Did it.
we're in that territory
Yeah, did
now.
it in less than 2 years. He was
Yes.
able to
Mm-hmm.
move it to that point. So nothing is totally impossible. But for me, growing up, I was measuring Nigeria with what I was reading. That time there were not access to internet and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. What I was reading about other parts of the world. So like I told some of my students, I woke up in the morning I listen to a BBC, Voice of America. My dad puts them on every morning. So I get to hear about what is happening the other parts of the world. I knew that Nigeria was not anything close to that. I had pen friends across the world, and they were writing me. They were telling me about their lives. I was seeing pictures of places like Australia, Jamaica, and other places. And I felt Kenya. I felt, that Nigeria is lacking in so many ways. But today, I went to Kenya eventually, and I saw that Kenya is more organized, better than Nigeria. Life there is more meaningful, even though we have more resources than they do. So I think without everybody knows, I think that the 80s, the politicians during that era, 80s and 90s, though you can say under military mostly, they were, the country was, there was still hope, redemption. Right now, I'm not sure for the people who are proposing that things could change, unless there is a big social change, transformation, which I don't know how it's going to happen. It's not going to be achieved by this their gradual process. I just listened to the president today in his first media chat. It was horrible. Just listening to him, there's no way you can think that that man and what comes out from his mouth, that he has a good understanding of how terrible things are, or where to take the country to. Yeah.
So, very, there's a lot that, from what you said that can be unpacked. I remember feeling, you talked about going to Kenya for the first time, and a similar experience when I went to Kenya. But for me, the most sort of an experience that I've spoken about on numerous occasions is my first visit to Uganda, which was in 2001. I've since been there several other times, but on that visit, several things stood out for me that I have not forgotten. In fact, that remain even more memorable as events in Nigeria, continue to deteriorate. So I arrived at Entebbe Airport, and I was welcomed. I'd been invited there by the U.S. consulate to give workshops to writers there. And so a driver from the embassy, U.S. consulate, picked me up. And the first thing was that he spoke, somebody who's a driver, that he spoke very clear, very correct English. And as we drove from Entebbe Airport into the center of Kampala, as I looked on both sides, I could see that there was electricity. So I said to this driver, I said, "What's the electricity situation like in Uganda?" And he said, "Bad." And I said, "How bad?" He said, "Very bad." And I said, "How often do you suffer power failures?" He said, "Once or twice a week." And I said, "For how long?" He said, "Sometimes up to 2 hours." So it turned out that what was happening was that they will have load shedding. And if you read the newspaper every morning, they will tell you the sections that will lose power at a certain time, and they will tell you when the power will be returned. But for a driver in Uganda who wanted his country to be held to the same standard as every developed country, wanted regular, uninterrupted power, it was not good enough to lose power once or twice a week. Interestingly, I stayed in Uganda exactly for a week. In that week, I did events in 3 hotels. In that same week, there were receptions for me in 3 residences, 3 homes. In not one of those places did I encounter a power failure. So that tells you how unusual it was, so that I could stay in Uganda for 1 week and really not experience power failure, right? And excuse me. So the next day after I arrived, the writers in the writers group that had gone to give workshops to held a reception for me. They had bought a small property in the center of Kampala with funds that had been provided by some European country. And so after a while, I needed to use the bathroom, see. But I figured, knowing Nigeria, that the bathroom would be very dirty. And so I kept saying to myself, I might as well wait until I return, until I got back to my hotel. But, the conversation continued. So I really needed to ease myself. So I asked them to show me the toilet. The toilet was so clean that you could eat food inside the toilet. Okay. So when they were about to drop me, I then assumed that the water in this residence, this house that the writers group had bought, must have come from a borehole. I didn't imagine that it could come from government. It could come from public works, right? So as we were going, I said to them, I said, um, this the water supply you have in your office. I said, it's from a borehole, right? And they said they didn't understand what borehole meant. They said, what do you mean? I said, you must have dug your own borehole to supply the water in your building. And they said, no. I said, so where do you get the water? And they said, public water. So I said to them, what percentage of the city of Kampala has access to running water? Again, they didn't understand my question. They said, what do you mean? I said, there must be a lot of homes, a lot of offices, a lot of sections of Kampala with no access to water. And they said, no, that there is a code in the city. If you build a house, there's a fee you must pay to the municipal authorities, and then you have water provided. And what struck me was that after I got back to Lagos, because this was when my wife and I were teaching at the University of Lagos, I was meeting with a group of friends subsequently, and I told them what I had found in Uganda. And one of them said to me, "Oh, are you comparing us with Uganda? What is their size?" And I said to him, I said, "You are being boastful about your incompetence." I said, "What you should be asking is what is their resource? This is a country with very, very limited resource, but they're able to provide public water. They're able to provide more or less steady electricity." And so the point that I'd like to get to, you made the point earlier that the best of Nigerians tend to leave and then to thrive outside of the country. But there's nevertheless some kind of contradiction that I find in the same Nigerians is that after they leave, that a lot of them are part of in the discourse of a Nigerian, the conversations around Nigeria and its failures. That a lot of us who have left the country, who are living in other climes, other countries, and doing well, nevertheless find it easy, even attractive, to become apologists for the mess in our country, that we remain apostles of some ethnic collectivity or some narrow religious argument, so that I sort of speak about Nigerians, some Nigerians, obviously, I hope it goes without saying that this is not a blanket statement about Nigerians, but that too many Nigerians, when you speak about corruption in the country, they wait to hear the name of the person who is implicated. If the person who is corrupt happens to be Igbo, you find Igbo people rush out to defend the corrupt person. If the person who is accused of corruption is Yoruba, you find some Yoruba people feel that it's their moral duty to defend corruption because in the name of their ethnic solidarity or something. Or if it is a Muslim who's stolen money or a Christian, you find members of that religious faith come out and stand behind, and sometimes we say is our son, and so on. And one moment of that happened on a trip years ago to London, and Kayode Ogundamisi was interviewing me on a show that he had at the time, and Jonathan was the president. And I was saying how disappointed I was in Jonathan, that as somebody from an oil producing area, he'd done very little to address the structural developmental issues in the country, even in the Niger Delta area. And a man called in, it was a calling program, and said, you have to be objective. Jonathan is achieving a lot. So I said to him, what has he achieved? And he said he's building some roads. And this is a person who was living in the UK. So I said to him, you live in the UK, right? He said, yes. I said, have you ever heard the British Prime Minister or the Mayor of London speak about building roads as their achievement? And his response was, you cannot compare us to Britain, which is a very peculiarly colonialist, inferior thinking, to believe that, the British are special, so they can have real achievements. For us, we'll settle for road construction and so on. And so I said to him, why would you not compare Nigerian leaders or Nigeria to the UK? I said, after all, our president gets paid a lot more. In fact, our governors get paid a lot more than the British Prime Minister. Okay, so why is it, in your view, that both Nigerians who are inside the country, and there are quite a few of us who have left the country, find it or do not recognize the absurdity of justifying or apologizing for the tragedy in progress that is Nigeria? I'm sorry that I've taken so long.
Yeah. No, I understand. I wanted to point out that one of the reasons they always give also is the one about America has been there for 200 something.
Precisely, yeah. They tell you, yeah. So this guy, by the way, said to me, Rome was not built in a day. Okay, so so it's important that you raise that point, because then my response was, I said, let's say that it took 100 years to build Rome, or even 200 years. So I said to him, to this anonymous scholar, I said, if it took the original Rome 100 or 200 years to build Rome, they have left us a template. Okay, so they have built it and they've left us a template. If you come back 2,000 years later and you say, okay, Rome took 100 years to build Rome, so we're going to take 100 years building our own, I said, that's already an admission of failure, because you have the template. Rome was doing trial and error. They will move forward, figure it out, see what's wrong, and then fix things and so on. But we keep making that argument. So please address it.
Yeah, and things are mechanized now than when they built
Rome.
So that's not people. Yeah, people say things like that, but at the heart of it all is that people are not yet evolved. The fact that we live abroad does not mean that people have been able to imbibe things that made the countries where they live function well. They've not learned it. Some people don't know. There are some people in America for 40 years. If you ask them why is America functioning well, better than where they come from, they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand the core things, that because they are too busy,
Mm-hmm.
trying to make a living, trying to work and survive and take care of people at home. But some of them don't have the interest, really. Not just they don't have the interest. They just exist in those societies. It takes a lot to be able to understand. For instance, one of the things that we all have, when you come from Africa, most of the time you are given a wrong impression about Black people in Britain, Black people in America, how they ended up in the places they are, the situation they are. It will take personal study, personal efforts to understand what's behind that. Nobody will teach you in school.
Mm-hmm.
And most of our people here, they don't know it, they don't
Mm-hmm.
learn it. And if you hear them talk, you see that they've not evolved. They are still saying things that their uncle, like your uncle in your memoir, that never look at America.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they are still carrying the same story their uncles told them before they left home, even though they've been here for years, because they don't have time to study, they don't have
Mm-hmm.
the energy or the inclination.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you find those things. Some of them also, because I said this, and to their own defense, really, because of we play with injustice in Nigeria. Over time, people tell their stories of the Nigerian experiences.
Mm-hmm.
They call it when Nigeria happens to you. There are people who experience some terrible things in Nigeria that they close their mind from learning or even thinking about how to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is that they now fall back to that default position.
Mm-hmm.
If they are only interested in their ethnic group, that's what they're
Mm-hmm.
interested in.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care what else you're saying. They will
Mm-hmm.
defend their ethnic group. If they're only interested in their religion, and that's a prison, they see everything. Or
Mm-hmm.
they're attacking Christianity, they're
Mm-hmm.
attacking Islam. That's all he sees. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't see anything more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that is as a result of what the country did to a lot of our people. A lot of people are damaged.
Mm-hmm. Good.
We don't treat post-traumatic people.
Yeah, we don't. We
People
don't.
pass through trauma
I
in Nigeria.
Yeah. So I was just talking 2 days ago. Sorry, I got a call from a Somali writer friend of mine. I met him maybe 12 years ago or so. I was in New York at City College to moderate a conversation with Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the Kenyan novelist. And so he and I met. And then a few years later, he told me he was returning to Mogadishu. And he was staying in a hotel in Mogadishu. And one day that hotel was bombed by terrorists. He happened to be lucky that he wasn't there, but he lost everything because the hotel was really demolished. Um, excuse me. And so I heard from him after the attack. He called me from Mogadishu, telling me he was trying to make his way back to the US. And then he called me 2 days ago. And what he said was, first of all, he came back to America and became homeless. And so he's in New York, and he says he just, stayed in two shelters, and finally he's in the second shelter is a refurbished hotel. So he says it's, more conducive than the first place where he stayed in a more open communal place. But he told me that he was also seeing a therapist, so which is something that we don't do. People don't see therapists. And he said that in the years, I think he stayed for 3 or 4 years that he lived in Mogadishu, he said he saw so much that was destructive to his psyche. But he said that violence and horror had been normalized for him. And he didn't realize it until he came back here, and he said he was doing some really terrible things, both to himself and to others. And that finally he's been seeing a therapist. And he says to me, you know what Oyibo therapists do is basically they listen to you as you tell your story. He said, but in telling that story, you bring out these monsters that sort of lay dormant within you, but nevertheless activate your behavior in very unhealthy ways. So it's interesting that you spoke about the fact that we carry what Nigeria has done to us with us. Um, I remember I was a child. I've written about this in an essay called My Biafran Eyes. I was a child just before the war started, the civil war in Nigeria. And I saw a lot of horror. Okay, so during the war, as refugees, we were living in a community as refugees, and I remember Nigerian fighter jets coming and strafing basically a line of cars on in this town, and the occupants of those cars were burnt to a crisp. So you saw somebody gripping the tire, the wheel, who's become blackened. Like as if you've set meat on charcoal fire and forgot it for hours and hours, and that's human. And as a child, I saw that, and it's a memory that is very much there. On another occasion, my siblings and I and some other kids had gone to fetch firewood. Um, we saw a fighter jet come, was flying really low, and we could see the bomb, this huge metallic egg, as it came down and then detonated with this most horrific boom, sound. And from where we were fetching firewood, it looked to us as if that's where we lived with our parents as refugees, that the bomb fell. And so you can imagine now the terror of children feeling that we're going to come back with wood and our parents will no longer be there. We came back and it happened that our parents' home, where we lived, which wasn't our home, where we were refugees, had been spared, but the bomb had actually fallen on the building where we went to school, the elementary school at the time. On another occasion, my parents had taken me to a relief place where some food was given that had been donated by a charitable organization. And as we stood in line, a man who was a few paces in front of us just crumbled and fell. And so, as other men gathered and carried him away, I was, of course, as a kid, looking to see, and my parents were sort of using their bodies to block me from seeing what was happening. But of course, I never went to therapy for this, right? And I remember years ago that I had gone to give a talk someplace, and a white woman who was in the audience said to me that I was a very funny and happy person, and said, "How could I manage to be so well adjusted, to be a witty and funny person, despite the horrors that I had seen as a kid?" And that was the first time that it occurred to me to ponder that question. And I think that our luck is that, unlike a society like this one, that we have in our societies, that people are able to talk more openly. Of course, people drown themselves in alcohol, right? So that becomes a way of coping. People drink uh, themselves to stupor. People fall in gutters and spend the night there, right? Um, and then the next day they go out drinking and nobody stops them. But a lot of times we do not recognize that this is all part of the horror, part of the trauma that we're living out, in ourselves. So it's just a way of responding to the point that you just made, that Nigeria happens to us, and that when Nigeria happens to you, it's often, you sort of, you know, it, when people think about their country, right? You and I are now American citizens, right? There are so many things that we don't like about America, but then there are other things that we like about America. Okay. I can't see ways in which Nigeria has become beneficent to me, where I will say, I'm so proud because of this thing that Nigeria represents to me, you know. So, how can people heal? Is it possible for people to heal from this? So, that's one question that I'd like to ask. But I might as well ask another follow up question that has occurred to me as you answered the last question. If, as you say, that the experience of Nigeria happening to you, the trauma that comes with that, sort of encourages people to retreat into their ethnic Bantustans, as it were, or into their religious confinements, then what would you say about the clamor for the division of the country into separate units, you know, the Oduduwa Republic, Biafra, Arewa, and so on? Do you sometimes sort of feel tempted to say that this might be a viable answer to the crisis in Nigeria? So, if you take my first question about how do people heal, how do people confront the trauma of Nigeria happening to you, okay? And when you know, whenever you finish, you know, there's something that I just watched today, which I'd like to raise with you as
Okay.
well.
Yeah, the healing part is what people are looking for is a sign of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But they are not seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
They will be forgiven. They will be able to say, we put it aside and move forward if
Mm-hmm.
there is hope. But every day things are getting worse and worse. Let me give you an example. This how it illustrates what's going on in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
There is erosion everywhere, and
Mm-hmm.
you have not controlled the erosion, and
Mm-hmm.
you are constructing roads. You're just wasting time, resources, and money because the
Mm-hmm.
erosion will take it down, take
Mm-hmm.
everything out. So when people look at Nigeria, if they see, let's say someone wanted to get into the NDA, Nigerian
Mm-hmm.
Defense Academy, and I know a lot of people who call into the show, and
Mm-hmm.
their anger is all about what they went through when they took the
Yes.
exam. They were one of the best, and they couldn't get in because they are
Mm-hmm.
from the south, they are from this part of the country because they don't know any general. It's permanent. They
Mm-hmm.
can't get over that.
Mm-hmm.
If they see that today anybody who takes common entrance examination to federal government colleges, that people go in by merit, that's a healing. It will help them to heal.
Mm-hmm.
They will be
Mm-hmm.
able to say, okay, this
That things
country
have
that made
changed.
me, things are changing.
Mm-hmm.
But when they look and they see that it's even getting worse, then that their unhealed trauma
Mm-hmm.
will continue to make them have negative perception
Mm-hmm.
of what is going on in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how, if there are signs of changes, I think people are willing, they will be willing to forgive and forget
Mm-hmm.
and say that things are improving. But if there are
Mm-hmm.
no signs, in fact, if they are seeing worse situations than what they encountered,
Mm-hmm.
then why not? And then about the, I've been writing columns too for years, and I've
Mm-hmm.
written things like Destroy This Temple,
Mm-hmm.
where I basically propose that Nigeria is just like a council flat, you know, what they call council flats
In the UK.
in the UK. Here we
Mm-hmm.
call it projects in
Mm-hmm.
America. So if you remember the housing dichotomy in America, it's really what they did. So
Mm-hmm.
they put black people in projects here in America and
Mm-hmm.
gave white people who came back from the Second World War, they gave
Mm-hmm.
them houses on Long Island
Mm-hmm.
that they owned.
Mm-hmm.
So black people were kept on projects. And if you've been in one of those buildings, what you will notice is that there's so many people there, and of course conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
conflicts. And it gets to a point where they are in disrepair because the
Mm-hmm.
government, anything government is handling, they can't fix things.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, do you continue to maintain this building, try to maintain the building where the structures are their integrity is now in doubt? Or do you bring down the building and build small buildings and let people live in small houses instead of putting them in one big building? So I've thought about that, of course, depending on the nature of what's going on in the country. It will remain an option, not because the Biafrans fought a war. No, it will remain an option even for the Yoruba, for different ethnic groups who were, remember, they were countries or they were nations before the Europeans came. So it will remain an option for them each time things are not going well. I tell people that in America, if America starts losing its standing in the world, if it becomes, if it doesn't work for most people, California will leave, Texas will leave, so many states will leave the
New
union.
York, maybe,
Yeah, they will leave the union. That California, they don't need America to survive. You know, if they leave, they will be the sixth largest economy in the world. So what keeps any nation is if it's working for majority of the people. If there is still legitimate effort to make it a more perfect union. We have not started to define the union. I don't think the union in Nigeria is defined. Other countries are trying to make their union more perfect. Our own, we're yet resisting.
Because I remember that Chinua Achebe actually made that point that the Nigerian nation has not been founded. And Wole Soyinka, in a lecture at Harvard, which I attended, which is part of his book, The Open Soul of a Continent, made the point that there is no nation in this space. So there's a space that goes by the name of Nigeria, but there's no national spirit there, right? So
no, before you go, you go further, let me just say that this is how I look at it. I simply say that the ideals of Nigeria, they've not been tried and found wanting.
Yes,
they've been found difficult and left on track.
Yes.
Nobody wants to deal with that. But I would say let's take a break at this point. We did 1 hour. Just take a break.
Okay.
I know. It's so quick. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will continue the conversation. You lead, but let me just take a break because.
Are we back?
Yes.
We're back from the break.
Oh, okay. Let's take the real break.
No. That's fine. Okay, I was just surprised. So it's a delight to be back. My name is Okey Ndibe. I have flipped roles with the usual host, Rudolph Okonkwo. So today I'm the host of the show, the visiting host, and Rudolph is our very, very revered guest. So, Rudolph, you and I were talking about the idea of Nigeria and how it's, as you said, is a nation that has not been found wanting, but it's been found difficult and abandoned.
The
The
ideals of
ideals of the
Nigeria.
nations have not been found wanting, but have been found difficult
Mm.
and untried.
Yeah, left
Okay.
untried. Yeah.
So there's a question, therefore, and you had made a point earlier that, in your view, this sort of gradualist approach uh, would not work.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because it's going to take, at this point, perhaps centuries for Nigeria to
No, not
achieve.
not just that. Not just that. It may never happen
It
if
may
we
never
continue
happen.
this way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at it
So,
this
so
way.
even if we said that we were moving in a positive direction,
Yes.
at the rate that we're going, the a rate that is much slower than that of how do I of tortoise, maybe, that we're going to the nation is going to basically fall apart because it needs to catch up dramatically, so behind. And so what we find is a country that is not just behind the sort of the developed economies in the world, but behind neighbors like, or compatriots like Ghana, like Kenya, like Uganda. Nigeria, on the indices that count, is so far behind, right?
Yeah.
So I remember that I've been asked a question on numerous occasions whether I believe in Nigeria, and my answer is that I don't believe um, in any collectivity as such, right? I don't believe in Nigeria, nor do I disbelieve. Okay, I think, like you, that Nigeria can achieve its promise, and it has tremendous promise. But clearly, the way the country is going is in the direction of more profound tragedy. Okay, so given that history, how would you, what would you say to, say, young people who look at this history, or even not necessarily young people, older people who have had a wider span of the story of disappointment, of disillusionment? What would you say to them when they propose that the answer is Biafra or Duduwa or Arewa or the Niger Delta, Mend or something? What would you say to them?
I don't. A friend of mine would say, I don't begrudge them. I don't. I think at this point, every every participant in the Nigerian process,
Mhm,
everybody is needed.
mhm,
Um, the people who are saying they are tired are playing their role.
mhm,
It's left for the people who still believe in Nigeria to prove them wrong.
mhm,
If you look at the civil rights movement, there were people who were saying we want to go back to Africa.
mhm,
There were people who were saying we want our own states in
mhm,
America. I'm talking about black people.
mhm,
There were people who were saying we want war. We
mhm,
don't want this non-violence
mhm,
thing that Martin Luther King was preaching.
mhm,
But they all came together to accomplish the goal.
mhm,
So I think that those who are frustrated and they want to leave, they are doing the natural thing.
mhm,
Uh, Things I can take, it doesn't mean other people can take it. So they're
mhm,
doing the natural thing. They've set out for themselves. So the same way, those who are saying we still believe in Nigeria, it's left for the people who believe in Nigeria to prove it to the people who are saying that they
Mm-hmm.
once Nigeria starts working, the
Mm-hmm.
people who are saying they want to leave, they will want to, I think most of them will want to say, I'm going to stay.
Yes.
The
Yes.
reason why, if they are getting more audience, more people moving in their direction, is because more people are seeing reasons
Mm-hmm.
to think that a smaller unit may be the solution. This
Yes.
is I can debate both sides. I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you why I think a smaller unit. If the big one is not functioning, maybe we should go to the smaller unit
Sure.
because I don't like the idea that everybody's failing now. You know, the fact that both the northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, they
Mm-hmm.
are failing. Like the
Mm-hmm.
person you said who was telling you but what about the population of Uganda? They are very small. The
Mm-hmm.
My comeback will have been if if Nigeria is not functioning, if in let's say in Lagos State or even Ogun State or
Mm-hmm.
one state in Nigeria, you have constant electricity, you have water, you have gas coming to people's home,
Mm-hmm.
you have good transportation, good
Mm-hmm.
road network. That would have been something different. You say there is hope that maybe one day Abia State will be like Ogun State. Maybe Calabar, one day Calabar will be like Ogun State. But it's the whole country that is failing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole country of Nigeria, people are put inside the same project,
Mm-hmm.
same council flat. So maybe if we bring down the council,
Demolish it. Mm-hmm.
demolish it, and give people plots of land to build,
Mm-hmm.
maybe people will be able to enjoy nature space
Mm.
and live in a little bit better than being in that conflict zone in a building where the foundation is broken down, the beams are bad and everything. So that's an
Mm-hmm.
argument for that. So for people who are old, what I tell old people is that round up your affairs. You are about to die. There's nothing you can do about the situation. This is not going to be resolved in 20 years, in 30
Yes.
years, nothing, no matter what anybody does. Even if we have a revolution today,
Mm-hmm.
the issue about Nigeria cannot be resolved in 30 years. So if you're old and, just prepare your thing, talk to the young ones. It's the young
But
ones that I have hope.
yes.
When I look
Yes.
at them, I
Mm-hmm.
see that all these people you see in primary school without sandals, with roof that is leaking,
Mm-hmm.
maybe one of them will be the one that will say we have to change things.
Mm-hmm.
And it,
But yeah, so you have said that you don't think this process of, if there is a process, if there is a prospect.
there's no process here.
Okay, so is there, if there is a prospect of reclamation, of recuperation, you're saying that you see you see 30 years as even unrealistic in terms of the span, right?
If we start
Yeah.
today,
If we say, but isn't it also possible? Because my argument has been that Nigeria has all this talent. Okay, when you listen to Nigerians in different sectors, I've listened to Nigerians who are in the energy sector, and they will tell you that providing regular uninterrupted power for Nigerians from different sources, the thermal, the
solar.
solar, and so on and so forth, that is doable and is doable rather quickly if the political will is there, especially the political will to subvert what has become the entrenched interest of generator importers and sellers, right? But that what you see is that those who are in office have dual loyalties. Some of them are involved in bringing in the generator, some of them are invested, therefore, in the failure of every ambitious power project in the country. So they tell you that Nigerians can feed themselves with a targeted agricultural policy, and that we can have regular uninterrupted power in Nigeria, given the political will. So that's why I sort of feel that Nigeria is actually a solution that is rather so close but waiting to be activated, to be put in place by a leader who says, I want a different kind of legacy. Because, we tend to have leaders who count their success in terms of how much they were able to enrich themselves and their inner circle of family and friends, associates, and all. So that, because I know somebody, a relative who ran a company that he founded in Nigeria, had to give it up ultimately and go to work for somebody after 30 years of running this company. And this company at one point was doing well, paying his staff, well. Then they made a mistake to go and take a loan in dollars for a project that they got in Naira. And the rate of the dollar at the time they took it from the bank was very good. And then the value of the Naira plummeted, and they couldn't dig themselves out of the hole of paying off that loan. The project, so it's like you take $1 million contract, $1 million loan, to do a project that was that would have given you $1 million, in profit. But then the project, the Naira got so devalued that the project became worth, $250,000. Okay. And still you had to repay the $1 million. So they fired half of their staff, then fired another half, and they started paying. They used to pay, I remember they called me to give a writing workshop to their staff, and they paid me handsomely. Suddenly they now pay every few months, they pay. And this guy was telling me that because of the equipment they had in their office, that they have 3 massive generators, which they ran round the clock. And he said what they paid, their energy costs, that if they had regular power, said they will hire double the number of staff, and they would, okay. So that's why I'm saying that we can actually, my view is that Nigeria can actually dramatically come out of its morass if we had the political will. If somebody came to power and said, okay, my project is not to squander and to loot public resources, is to fix the country and let Nigerians remember me, sort of the name that Obasanjo had pretensions towards, the founder of modern Nigeria. So if he had done the power project with the almost $20 billion that he poured into the sector, which most of it stolen, right? So if he had been serious in that commitment, I think that Nigeria would be in a different place. So I'm wondering, therefore, why you think that even with a commitment that is still going to take more than 30 years for Nigeria to
You know
rise
what
itself.
what Peter Obi said before he became a presidential candidate? He said that Nigeria was a car with a knocked engine,
Mm-hmm.
and then he ended up wanting to become the president of the
Of the
country.
knocked engine.
Knocked engine, the driver. And I asked him that question. He tried to answer it by saying that you need somebody who will take it to the mechanic to fix the engine that is knocked. And so the problem with that, you mentioned Obasanjo and the power sector. That's a good example of where I talked about erosion, and I did soil science.
Mm-hmm.
Erosion, there is erosion happening, and you are trying to fix the road without fixing the erosion.
Mm-hmm.
The site, the gully is everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and they are going to carry away whatever thing you are building on the road. So that's what happened with the power sector initiative by Obasanjo. You
Mm-hmm.
didn't deal with structural issues in the country that is responsible for endemic corruption,
Mm-hmm.
that is responsible for lack of accountability,
Mm-hmm.
lack of transparency, and you think you can fix a major sector without dealing with those things.
Mm-hmm.
Where you have corruption endemic,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way that if you see police collecting money on the street and you are basically running a corrupt system, you think that you bring millions of dollars or billions and it won't seep out of the system. It will.
But let me speak to that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell a quick story. I was once in Ghana during the time when I was doing my Fulbright in 2001, 2002. So I went to Ghana for a conference, and I drove around the night with a friend of mine who is Nigerian, but lived in Ghana at the time. I think he's still there now. And so we were driving around at night from a restaurant to a club, and the police stopped us and asked a few questions and then waved us on. So I was saying to him, that if it were Nigeria, they would insist on getting money. So he told me that the president at the time, either the president or a radio station, had set up um, um, a hotline where you call with reports of police corruption. So if the police took money from you, you call the radio station, say where it happened, describe the police officer, and that the police authorities were taking action. The police officer will be fired. Okay, so I think that your analysis is correct. That Obasanjo um, promised on his honor. I remember that he said on his honor, and I remember I felt sorry for my father-in-law because I was trying to tell him that Obasanjo had very little honor to speak of. But my father-in-law was very close to Obasanjo, and believed that he had, a storage of honor, and that he was going to uh, call upon this to ensure that things were done right. But so I remember that when Obasanjo came to office and he made all the right noises about stopping corruption. Or when Buhari came to office, in fact, Buhari's was more, I think, more poignant, particularly because I actually happened to be in Abuja, and I um, spoke to somebody who told me that the first 2 weeks when Buhari was in office, that if you arrived at the airport and you were trying to bribe customs or you were trying to give money to a police, they would actually rebuke you and say, take it away from me, because they thought when Buhari came in and said, again, as a man who fought a war against indiscipline, war against corruption, they felt, okay, he's coming now to stop these things. He's going to jail all these ex-generals who have stolen Nigeria's money. That's what Nigerians believed, right? But very soon they found out that Buhari was like anybody else, and so we settled back in. So I think that the question of corruption in Nigeria can be quickly addressed, right? If the head of state says to the police, arrest anybody, okay, regardless of their station in society, if they've committed a crime, especially if they have been corrupt. So if there's a minister who is close to the president, and the minister, all the ministers see that the president is not stealing a dime, right? I don't think a minister will have the effrontery to steal. And if the minister is not stealing, he's not going to allow the permanent secretaries to steal. If the permanent secretary is not stealing, he's not going to let the people under him steal. So that, in a sense, the argument I'm making still is that if there's a political will, if somebody comes to office, okay, and says, I want to stop this rot, okay, I want to invest and change.
No, don't go far. Don't go far. You know why it's not
Okay,
going to happen? Is
okay,
this?
tell me.
Let me
Yeah,
give you an example. Someone
yeah.
like Tinubu.
Mm-hmm,
So for those who know Tinubu, for
mm-hmm,
many years, even after he became, after his term as governor of Lagos State,
mm-hmm.
when you go to Tinubu's house, you go home with a bag of money. You're giving money. Okay.
Yes, yes.
There are people who knew
Mm-hmm,
what Tinubu did to
mm-hmm,
become rich the way he is.
mm-hmm,
Okay. Those people are still around him.
mm-hmm,
People that were there when he was governor, they were still around him.
mm-hmm,
So for him to transform himself and be this person that will say, I'm against corruption, you
Mhm.
shouldn't do this, he
Mhm.
has to first of all come out
Mhm.
and say, oh, I did all these things. I'm
Yes.
a terrible person.
Yes.
I've changed.
Yes.
Now I'm a new person. If you knew me before, don't come near me to
Yeah.
say, do what I used to do. I'm not.
Yes.
If you
And
don't do that, if
yes.
you don't do
Mhm.
that, if I
Mhm.
know that you drink kai kai,
Mhm.
at night, and
Mhm.
you pretend you don't drink kai kai,
Mhm.
and you are shouting people should not drink. I know you drink kai kai. I'll come to you. I say, my forget them. Let's go and drink kai kai. So it's not going to work with these people.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
have to. There has to be a big cut. Apart from the fact that it will be difficult if you are known to be straight person
Mhm.
to get in
Mhm.
there first. I'm saying damaged group good like Tinubu or Basanjo, who
Mhm.
if they want to transform, they have to have a big break from their past,
Mhm.
and then the other problem will be where would they find the people
Yes.
that will uphold that new integrity,
Mhm.
and remember that because of what they did in the past,
Mhm.
they have to bring around them people they trust, people
Mhm.
who knew, people who will not go and talk.
Mhm.
It's complex. It
Mhm.
doesn't happen
So
in a
in other words, you say that we are doomed.
doomed. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So so
Unless something else.
okay. So
Happen.
if that's your argument that we're doomed, I would then propose that the answer must be that we try something we've not tried up to now,
Before.
which
Mhm.
is balkanization. That you split Nigeria into basically, because my argument is that any community that wants to be its own autonomous, discrete community should have and can hold a plebiscite. Okay, should be able to be on his own and create his own nation. Because some people think that Nigeria is going to be divided into an Igbo state, a Hausa state, and a Yoruba state. And I tell them Nigeria has, some people quote 250 ethnic groups. It hasn't made sense to me, even though some ethno-linguists are saying it's closer to 400. So how can you be fewer than 200 million or 200 million people, and then you have um, 400 ethnic languages and so on? So it must be that there are languages that are spoken only by a few hundred. But it seems to me, therefore, that you, Rudolph Okonkwo, and I know that you've had a running battle with um, uh, some Biafran agitators because they feel that you should come out and announce your support, and you haven't quite done that. So you should. It
Okay,
it should
so
follow that
so
if Nigeria is irredeemable, which is your argument, okay, that we should try a retreat into our ethnic
remember what
uniqueness.
Ojuku said. Let me see if I can remember the exact quote, which is that Nigeria is like the Ottoman Empire, and we are told to sacrifice our ourselves to the
Mm-hmm,
integrity of this ramshackled something. So the point I'm making, I'm not there. I'm not where I'm saying that, because I'm not where I'm saying that there's still another option,
mm-hmm,
which we don't know if anybody is working on it.
mm-hmm,
Okay. Remember what I said, that the ideals of Nigeria, they've not been tried and found wanting. They've been
mm-hmm,
found difficult and left untried.
mm-hmm,
The What you suggested is what I said. If you're looking at the political actors we have now, hoping that redemption will come through them, I'm saying
mm-hmm.
no, it's not going to come
Yeah,
through them.
yeah.
The other option is whether there's space for different characters to
Mm-hmm,
get there.
mm-hmm,
You can say that Obi could not even get there. Obi
mm-hmm,
is one of them,
mm-hmm.
but a little bit better than them. But they
Yeah.
could,
Well, he was adopted by the youth of the
yeah,
country,
yeah. But
and as I said to the youth, if you were able to deliver the presidency to Obi, and that was one occasion where I was profoundly misunderstood, and I still am misunderstood by a lot of people. People felt that when Obi was governor of Anambra State, I was critical of him, which I was,
Yeah, we were.
and that Obi was now running for the presidency, and I began to champion him. All I said, which I stand by, was that if you watch that campaign, Obi came across as the most prepared person. Obi was a person who uh, seemed to think at all. So Atiku was in there. Okay, Northerners should put him there, um, um, and then Tinubu was the Miloko thing is my turn, and so on. And the fact that Tinubu refused to debate, and he went to Chatham House and became a distributor of questions so that he couldn't even take questions. That at campaign stops, he had somebody behind him who was sort of a kind of marionette telling him what he was going to repeat, um, was very disturbing. So, if anybody found that impressive, um, that shocks me. So all I said was that Obi, in terms of being a vibrant candidate, in terms of engaging for Ireland, I'm going to come to that because I think that you've got into trouble with him and with some other politicians. So I'm going to come to that in a moment. But so I felt that Obi was the person who seemed to have thought in any profound way about the problems of Nigeria. So that's one thing that counted for him. The other thing that counted for him was that young people, for whatever reason, had adopted him as the person who symbolized their quest for change in the country. And as I said in several columns and in my podcast at the time, that if young people deliver the presidency to Obi, they should insist not on being in the corridors of power, but being in the very room of power. As I said, if you left Obi alone, he could do deals with the people you wanted out of power. So, but trust Nigerians. Some people felt that I had fallen prey to ethnic sentiments or whatever, and they've had um, they've had their say, and so on, and continue to have it from time to time. But then in the end, I think B didn't make it. I think that election still leaves a lot to be desired because we had a process that was supposed to be sacrosanct and was supposed to be um, fraud proof, and we saw that Nigerians are capable of making anything susceptible to fraud, however much of a fraud-proof technology you hand them. They'll find a way. So who knows what happened? I would have wanted to get a real measure. And my sense is, there are people who believe that Obi won the 2023 elections. My own take is that perhaps if the elections had been more credible, that there might have been a runoff. The two candidates who participated in that runoff, I'm not sure about. But I don't think that Tinubu won the election legitimately, credibly. I don't know what your take is on that question.
Yeah. Before let me clarify one thing.
Mm-hmm.
During the national conferences we've had in the past, they've tried to isolate certain groups from being part of it, especially the people they think are separatists, not being part of that conversation, which I think is wrong. I think everybody should go there and have their say. But this is what has been going on. If you go back to Jonathan when we had the last one till
Mm-hmm.
today, the conference is happening. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the separatists are having their say, their
Mm-hmm.
voices are loud in the northern part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
You have different groups now coming up from Sokoto to Borno.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere is in disarray in the
Mm-hmm.
country. So what we are trying to avoid, the breakdown of the country, breakup of the country, is already happening. there's a new trend in the north. You may not be aware of this, that the Hausa people are revolting against the Fulani people that came
Mhm.
to their
With,
region. This
yeah.
is something that wasn't on the surface before,
Mm-hmm.
but it's now
Mm-hmm.
on the surface all
Mm-hmm.
across most part of the northern part of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this breakdown. The country is already breaking down to the lowest level that is possible. The
Mm-hmm.
question is, can somebody come and put it back together,
Mm-hmm.
or will it become impossible to put together again? That's where we are. And it's the job of those who believe in one Nigeria and the ideals or the prospects of that one Nigeria to put their acts together and show people, because you will soon have another generation of people growing up believing that there is no hope in that one Nigeria because
Mm-hmm.
of failure of successive leaders who are architects of that one Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see it now, but that's
Mm-hmm.
what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
There are kids in the southeast, kids in the southwest, who are thinking that this may be the solution, the way out.
Mm.
Yeah.
So let's sort of speak to some troubling events that have happened recently in Nigeria. Um, it looks like the country discovers new ways, new levels of failure, of disaster. Um, so Christmas period, some people came up with the idea to distribute scholarships, to distribute money. Some people came up with the idea to offer rice to what's called the less privileged, or um, the less fortunate, as we say in Nigeria. Instead of which this ostensible act of philanthropy um, yields just unspeakable levels of tragedy, with deaths running into dozens in different parts of the country. What does this speak? What does this say about the place of Nigeria today? That Nigerians are losing their lives, a country that is an oil producing country, a country that um, in the 1960s was projected by many to be the hope of an emergent mid level economic and political power in the world. That we now have Nigerians stampeding and dying for rice that's donated by some people. How how do you respond to this level of?
Desperation. It's desperation. They asked that question to the president, Tinubu, and he gave a rambling answer that
Mhm,
was quite unfortunate.
mhm,
Um, I will do the same thing he did. I will ramble, but it's desperation, and this is I've analyzed this in so many ways. I part of the people I blame, apart from the failure of the government,
mhm,
which is at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, we have this idea that we're exceptional, that somehow we can follow best practices seen all over the world,
mhm,
and that maybe God or Allah will protect us from the consequences of not doing that. That's what we're seeing. The fact that we do things, we say anyhow,
mhm,
somehow we will get through,
mhm,
everything will be okay.
mhm,
We're beginning to see it's not going to be okay.
mhm,
Okay, the president was the one who said to I think to Peter Obi, now statistics will go chop, which means that setting the tone that we don't care about
mhm,
statistics,
mhm,
but everything is boils down to statistics. Everything.
mhm,
So the economy was going down, inflation was high, exchange rate was high, a lot of people are falling into poverty. We don't know how many. We don't care. We don't care about statistics. But if we had social scientists who are doing their job, they would have been telling us that the number of people who are getting poorer are more than what is sustainable in a society. So if you want to do a giveaway of whatever you want to do for Christmas, and you normally, because these people, most of them do this every year. So it's not like they've not been doing it. But because nobody alerted them that the pressure on people is a lot, that people who were not interested in coming before or had options, they have no other option but to go. And it was impossible to manage. So in a certain level, this is what I tell people now. I said, there's no need lamenting that the government has failed. We know that. The question is, what are we going to do as individuals, as citizens, on our own? What are we going to do? Since we can't even reform the government, because that seems to be impossible too, for people to demand transparency, accountability. The other question is, what are we going to do to improve the situation? That's really my message going into the new year. I'm saying to people, think of what you can do. One small thing you can do.
Yes.
It could be decide that you will gather information. I give this common example I always give about drunk drivers in America killing people. It took parents who lost children to come together and become a lobbying force. They forced the lawmakers across states, local councils, to pass laws, and they made sure that police, prosecutors are making sure that these laws are people are punished for being drunk. It transformed the society. If you are living in a society where everything is failing, the government is failing, if the people also fail to step up and do the one they can do, and people are doing it, I'm not saying that we're not, people are doing it in different ways. For instance, most schools in the Southeast, I don't know about Amobia, but where I come from, people are the one, they are the people contributing money, fixing schools. People are building roads where I come from in my hometown because the government is not doing the job.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's the ideal thing. I'm not saying they shouldn't hold the government accountable, but while we're waiting to figure out how to even get them to pay attention to us, the ones that people can do, they should be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of what baffles me though is that we see the absolute cluelessness. You spoke about Tinubu's press conference, which media chat, which I haven't had the ill luck of watching.
Oh, you will. I will show you a little bit of that soon.
So, but what shocks me, because this is not the first time, I remember when Obasanjo was president, that there was an explosion in a munitions factory in Lagos, military barracks, and dozens and dozens of people died, some of them by jumping into a swamp in desperation. And so Obasanjo showed up. And of course, the people who were just beside themselves with grief, who were looking for their loved ones and so on, heckled him a bit. And he just spoke to them dismissively and said, I don't have to be here. So it's almost as if he'd done a favor to the people by showing up. So you find a Tinubu who doesn't seem to understand, according to you, the enormity, the gravity of what's transpired in his country, with people dying in a desperate dash for rice. Okay, which it always it's not amusing because I don't find tragedy amusing, but rice has little or no nutritional value, and yet that's what people give to Nigerians at Christmas. so people eat rice and put palm oil on it, no nutrition, but they down it. It just fills your stomach, and there's nothing nutritious about it. Okay. But what baffles me, to get to my point, is that the more governments or leaders in Nigeria, I always feel, self-conscious when I use that word in relation to Nigerian politicians. When I call them leaders, they are rulers, more like it. The more they show a disconnect, profound disconnect from the plight of the people whose lives they run and ruin, it looks like it's the more they ensure that they return to the centers of power, or that people like themselves who are cut from the same cloth of visionlessness, of viciousness, of corruption, that they are self-selected back into power. Okay. So you look at somebody like Bello, the governor of Kogi State, who was wanted by the EFCC, and he was, he paid school fees, into the future for his children at the American International School, which my kids attended when we were Fulbright scholars. So you are the governor. It is within your purview to set up schools at work where your kids could have gone. But no, you don't do that. You take the resources of the state to pay for your kids. Why is it that the more they do these things, the more Nigerians select people like that to return to power? Like when you find somebody who is halfway decent in terms of vision, but who doesn't have the resources, the money with which to bribe voters, that Nigerians frequently would dismiss such candidates and invoke the kind of language that Tinubu invoked, which is na statistics we go chop. Sometimes they say na grammar we go chop. A kind of valorization of ignorance. So they celebrate the ignorant, and then they put down those, with ideas of how to order society. Why is that?
People are jaded. If you look at the statistics from last election, how many people participated?
Mm-hmm.
How many people registered to vote? I think there were about 90 something million people registered.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think 50, maybe, I don't know if 50% of them collected their cards.
Mm-hmm.
The people that voted, I think it was, I'm not totally sure, about 30 something million out of 90 something. So you find out that people don't even believe. And it's going to be worse next election if the
Mm-hmm.
last one did not show them any sign that something has changed. The
Mm-hmm.
next one will be worse because most people will not want to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And people are beginning to say that unless something is reformed, there is no reason
Mm-hmm.
why they want to be part of it. So what you find out is that the people who participate are people who want to be like these people
Mm-hmm.
who are in charge. So they are the ones who are eager to participate. The other people already wrote it off that there is no need to participate because nothing is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
That the people they want to vote for, either they will not give them the votes, even if they vote for them or something else. So they have no reason to participate. Let me play you just 2 minutes of the video of the president, the presidential chat, and you tell me
Okay.
what you make of this.
Okay.
Fighting corruption a priority for you? If it is, what are the areas that you're looking at?
Corruption in all ramifications is bad for the people. But first of all, pay enough attention to the causes Why are the people corrupt at all? The lack of social amenities, the lack of needs in some areas, lack of funding for their children's education. There are so many anti-corruption mechanisms that you can put in place that will help the people not to be corrupt. Pay them good and living wages. I have moved from 35,000 to 70,000. To me, that's anti-corruption. And if I can earn more, I'm giving more money to the state and local government level. I've been transparent with my earnings. Every month there is a publication as to how much this country is making.
But Mr. President, it doesn't address grand corruption. There's petty corruption and there's grand corruption. Only recently, the EFCC, published the fact that one person owns 735 houses in Abuja alone. One person.
And we got it. You don't know how long it has started. He did fantastic infrastructure. He had.
All right, that is your president. Now, this is what he said, and people might run away with it thinking that it made sense. He increased the pay of less than 1 million people, because when they say they increase workers' pay, you would think that it's everybody who works in Nigeria that gets that increase. No, it was just 700 and something federal employees that they increased the pay. So from 35 to 70,000. When Buhari was in power, so before he did his exchange rates and removal of subsidy, that 35,000 can buy you a bag of rice.
Yeah.
Now,
a lot more.
Now the 70, he increased it to
cannot buy
one bag of rice. But he just says it that way, that he increased their pay. He says that the state governments are getting more money now under him than before. But that money they are getting, if you put it in
worth a lot less.
is worth less. But this is something he says, and if you listen to every bit of what he was saying, you will just know there is no hope. That they told him that somebody built, so the EFCC cut
700 houses,
and he said, "We got it." That it now belongs to the government. He did not care. How is it possible that somebody will do this in a country? He did not care. He didn't tell us who the person.
But precisely, so because that's the thing about Nigeria, the lack of transparency. He just spoke about him being transparent. In a transparent system, that person who has those homes will be undergoing a court. First of all, the government should not seize the property without a trial, right?
Yeah.
But what happens is the EFCC moves in, issues a press release. We have seized property of 700 by somebody. We don't know who that person is. Before you know it, those currently in office will then get those houses allocated to them. And even the person who built them originally will get some of them back if he sends the right delegations or if he goes to see the president. Okay? So you don't have what we call the rule of law. Okay? And I had mentioned earlier to you, there was some video that I saw today on one of the WhatsApp apps that WhatsApp groups that I belong to, of a young woman from Anambra State who told a very heartrending story of her brother who was at a party, and somebody called the police and said they were making noise. And the police came and rounded them up, took them to Ajali police station. His mother went to the police station, and And the police said, "Oh, you can't bail your son because you're a woman. Women are not allowed to bail." So she called her brother, the young man's cousin, uncle, to come. As he was on his way, the Ajali police station said they had received instructions to move them to SARS Okozo. And SARS Okozo was a notorious killing ground for any person who was just arrested. They were wasted by this somebody Nwafo,
Yeah.
James Nwafo or something, the police officer in charge. And so the woman, you know, uh, placed an urgent call to her husband and said, "Listen, you have to rush to the SARS station in Okozo." The man got there. The police said, "No, we don't have any such person." And they were there when their son and the other three other young men were brought in. So the woman said, "That's our son, that's our son." And the wife told them to leave, and send them away. The next day they went back, and the sergeant or Nwafo told them that he had killed the young man, but he killed him. And they, some people told the father, maybe he's just bluffing, maybe he wants you to give him money. So the man sold a parcel of land and took 3 million naira in a plastic bag to go give the man. And the man said, "This money is nothing, it's too small. But at any rate, even if you brought more money, I've killed the young man." And nothing has happened to this police officer. He's retired. I think there was actually a point where he was rehired by the Anambra State government to do private security for them, until there was an outcry. But this young woman, she's gone to the National Assembly, the National House of Reps or something has held hearings. They've called the police, and the police will say, "Oh, we don't have our petition," even though she says she's written more than a dozen petitions to the police. And watching a young woman, she was a teenager at the point her brother went missing. She said 12 years ago now. And watching it, it just it brought me to such profound despair about Nigeria that we had a killing operation. I remember many years ago, I wrote a column called Murder Incorporated, when an international human rights organization came out with a report about extrajudicial executions by the Nigerian police. That people are just arrested. And there's a young man from my town who was held in detention by the police for some weeks. And when he came out, he spoke to me about his harrowing experience. He said that his wife had to come every day to bribe the police, because he said when more people were brought to the detention center, there was there was no room to keep them. And he said what the police would do is that they would select a few people who were not producing money, take them to the back of the and just shoot them and kill them. So you see that every sector of Nigeria is pathological, is diseased. The police that are supposed to stop crime are the greatest manufacturers of crime. So how do we even begin to address all of this? Is it even possible?
Yeah,
And so I told you when you asked to interview me, I said to you, I no longer understand Nigeria. I've stopped writing about Nigeria. I've stopped following much of Nigeria. And it is that level that at every um, um, minute level of the country, you find this
yeah.
kind of
Every if
disease.
you pick any segments, yeah,
Mhm.
every it's the same thing. I like your analogy with disease. It could either be you'll find a very strong antibiotics, or you may have to amputate the leg, the hand, whatever is impossible to cure. But the whole body is a disease. Is the disease on is unbelievable.
Mm,
It's overwhelming. But the thing is this: we have not even tried to say that it cannot. Maybe there's an antibiotic that we've not tried. Nobody's trying anything. We're basically rubbing oil on it. Nobody listen to Tinubu. We see that he has not tried. There's
He has no ideas either. He
no.
has no ideas, because you say the woman asked him about a strategy for fighting corruption.
Yeah,
You can see that he has not thought about it. And
no,
in a lot of ways, it is possible that intellectually he's not equal to the task of thinking
yeah. Of
about it.
course, of
But
course.
also, it is possible that he's hampered ethically, because somebody who himself is a repository of corruption cannot be a good,
Exactly.
a
Even if
producer
he
of good
goes through
ideas.
transfiguration,
Mhm,
even if he goes through transfiguration,
mhm,
he still has people around him who were there when he was doing his own part in the destruction of the country.
mhm,
So those people, he might personally be transformed, even though we have not seen any sign. Those
mhm,
people are not transformed.
mhm,
Okay, so he talked about there was a point in that chart where he was talking about size of government, reducing the size, and you see his convoy. He doesn't think of himself as
really,
part
yes,
of that,
yes,
part
yes.
of anything he's talking about. You know, it's totally unbelievable.
Mhm,
He was talking about somebody who constructed homes that the government is now seizing because it's corruption. Meanwhile, his son, his wife is donating money that they can't account for. Where did they get the
mhm,
money?
mhm,
And you don't think it's important for people to know,
mhm,
you know? And look at the budget. What is there for the presidency?
mhm,
The amount of billions they are spending when people are hungry. People,
mhm.
he's aloof, totally disconnected. It's shocking. I
Hmm.
mean, in the case of Obasanjo, at least you know that Obasanjo knows what's going on, even though he
Mhm,
may not implement it or be honest about that. But at least this one has no idea
mhm,
what's happening.
mhm. So let me. I think we should sort of segue
Oh,
into. I'd like to ask some questions about our other home, America, the United States.
okay.
But before we get there, I'd like to get a bit into your person, your idiosyncrasies. So you go by Dr. Damages.
Yeah, after I
Uh,
smoke Igbo.
After you precisely. So tell us the story, the origin of that
Oh,
name.
that's a long story now.
Make it
Okay.
give us the
I'll
version.
give you a
Yes.
small version of it.
Yes.
Okay. So that it was very easy. I went to Nobi High School,
Mm-hmm.
where people answer names other than the official government names. They call it a guy name or
Guy
a
name.
guy
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
So I was very young. I wasn't old enough to. I was very young for my class from
Mm-hmm.
primary school to high school, so I wasn't able to pick a name for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But people pick names like Mexico. It was a big deal that somebody was Mexico.
Alabama.
Morocco, yeah, there's
Yes.
one that is still Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin, Jamaica, things like that. But there was one guy called Damages,
Hmm.
and it was unique,
Hmm. Hmm.
Damages. So when I got to Akure Futa, I joined the press club there,
Mm-hmm.
and there you don't write with your real name. You
Mm-hmm.
have to pick a name. And the most famous journalist at that time in the school was called Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
He was a cartoonist, but he was writing too.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote my first article, I was told to pick a name. Was not allowed to use my name, Rudolph. So
Mm-hmm.
already there is Doctor Who, very famous. I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, okay, let me
Mm-hmm.
pick a name. I thought about. I remember
Mm-hmm.
Damages. I
Yeah.
picked Doctor Damages.
Yes.
That was it. That was the story.
Okay. Now you live up to uh, that 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 guy name. I
Yeah.
think you are the scourge somewhat of so many figures, from literary figures. I think that there are people you have interviewed who would never talk to you, who regard you as a mortal um, danger. you know You and I were recently at Yale University, where there was an international conference on Chinua Achebe, the legacy of Chinua Achebe. And I had come in several hours after the conference had started because I had other engagements on that day. But you had been there much earlier. Excuse me. Um, so former Governor Peter Obi was there. Current governor of Abia State, Alex Oti, was there. And then former minister, Obi Ezekwesili, was there. And I don't know what questions you asked them, both Peter Obi and Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, before I came in. But I know that they both took on you during a break for lunch. They were both very upset that you had asked them questions that seemed perhaps too adversarial, perhaps too combatant, perhaps embarrassing. So, my question for you is: do you enjoy making people uncomfortable and unhappy?
No, 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 no. I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. Seriously. No, I thought I was helping.
I think on that claim to being a nice guy, I think I have to ask your wife. Can you put her on?
She's not around. I would have brought her. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I thought I was trying to help. The problem is that.
So when you ask people very tough, gotcha questions, in your mind, your crazy mind tells you, "I'm going to help now." So
No,
let me,
let me
yeah,
use the
yeah,
example. These two
please,
examples to explain to
yes.
you. I always think that we have to prepare these people
Mm-hmm.
for the role that they are going to play or they are already in playing.
Oh,
So
that's what it
this is
is.
the problem with Tinubu and the interview that he had with the
Mm-hmm.
press today,
Mm-hmm.
because he was avoiding the press. He's not
Mm-hmm.
prepared. He has never
Mm-hmm.
been prepared to deal
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
talking to Nigerian people.
Yes.
So in the case of P2B, I thought I was, I think I have a good relationship with P2B, but
No,
that doesn't mean
they tend to forgive you ultimately, but
no,
it
not
was
not
clear
Obi, not Obi. Obi has not. Obi,
Obi has not
no,
forgiven
no, no.
you.
There's no way.
So you must have offended her in a
Yeah. We explained
particularly.
her own case. It's a
Yes.
special case because
Mm-hmm.
I also um,
Mm-hmm.
the case of P2B. Okay, so if you see my first encounter with P2B, that was something. The
Mm-hmm.
first time I encountered him, it was on Al Jazeera.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about Biafra
Mm-hmm.
and Nigeria. Obasanjo was in that on that program.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him that you are one of the people that failed the country. And
You told Peter Obi or
yeah,
Basanjo?
Peter Obi.
Yes.
Obasanjo had gone because Obasanjo
Mm-hmm.
was on the panel with us, but Peter Obi
Mm-hmm.
was with us. I said, you are one of the people that failed Nigeria, and Nigeria works for you. And
Mm-hmm.
he didn't like it. But anyway, I don't. What comes to my mind is what I say. I don't think I'm not saying it because I want to be annoying.
Contrarian.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's not the goal. The goal is to let them explain to me, let them explain to the people, because I represent the people. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about me. I think I'm
Mm-hmm.
representing the people. So
Mm-hmm.
what happened at that Yale conference was that Peter B spoke, and at the end, he was using statistics about
Mm-hmm.
the election
Mm-hmm.
to make his point. Things like number of people that voted, number of people that voted for the opposition for this and this, the president got this. And I felt that we should put a caveat to say that these figures are not reliable. These figures, because we, for a long time, P2B and the Labour and the opposition, PDP, they were all saying that the election was not credible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to come to a conference like Yale and repeat these figures,
Mm-hmm.
giving the impression that these figures are true, because 20 years from now, nobody will remember that we basically condemned the election as not being credible.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to him, that you shouldn't. But I still believe he misunderstood what I was going for. He
Mm-hmm.
thought that I was touching on something sensitive for him, which
Mm-hmm.
was the criticism that he was throwing out figures. around during the campaign. So that made him think I was aggressive, attacking him. That wasn't what I was going for. I wanted him to just say that, we have to put asterisks on when we say these figures, because they didn't let people vote. They didn't count the votes everywhere. That was all I was going for. And he was very vicious. He didn't even remember who I was. He was saying, that guy, this guy. I've never seen him like that. He was.
No. I'm sure Obi remembers you. I don't think.
Of course.
Yeah.
But when he was responding to me, he
Yes.
just ignored that. I was shocked. He was angry. I touched on something that I've never. I didn't know. I didn't think about it. So so when I tried to respond, people held me down. People beside me said, don't, because I wanted to tell him something he used to say, which is that when the premise of an argument is wrong, the conclusion is also wrong. So I was thinking that the premise of what he was saying, they were wrong, and the conclusion should be wrong. But anyway, that was for B. Eventually, we settled it. We sorted it out.
Because I
had time to spend with
during
him.
lunch. You and
I spent time with him, and I was able to.
And yes,
and then, but Obi's own was different. Obi will never forgive, and it didn't start that day. It didn't start that day.
So you had provoked her.
Before
a different occasion.
Different occasion. That was when she stopped communicating with me. I met Obi in New York after an event, and we were chatting like this, and we were walking to her car or something. And she told me, she told me, look, you guys are criticizing all the time. It's time for you to come home and participate. That was what she said to me. I said, that would be good. First of all, I said, there are people who are journalists for the rest of their life. You don't have to go into politics. I can decide to do what I'm doing for the rest of my life. You guys go and do your thing. I said, but in any case, for people who want to come and participate, you haven't told us what you saw. You have not told us why you failed. She took offense to that, but it was just two of us that day.
Yes.
Why did I say she failed? I said, well, as far as I'm concerned, nothing changed. Why you, So she told me she was writing books, that she was explaining in her books, and I encourage people to always write books when they have experiences, memoirs. Tell us what happened, so that people who may want to come, they learn from you. So I asked her, what books are you writing? What are the titles? What are they about? The first thing she said, the first one was something about solid minerals and due process. I said, no, that's not the book. That's not the book I'm talking about. I'm talking about your experiences as minister. Why did you fail? So that was the last time I saw Obi many years ago. I don't know, more than 8 years now or so. And then I saw her there. And she stood up there and she condemned intellectuals, people like you, that you people are the problem, the reason why Africa is the way it is, and blah, blah, blah. So I stood up there again. I said, Obi, you've yet to write a book to tell us why you fell. So she didn't find it funny, because she was dominating the panel. She did very well. She made the Peter B look like not ready for prime time, the way she was answering questions, and she was enjoying it, the attention that people were giving to her. So for me to stand up and say that she failed, she was waiting for a chance to hit back at me. They didn't give her a chance. So you saw me when I went to see her after she, if not that people were around, maybe she would have given me a slap.
No, I don't think she's there. I don't think she's a violent type. But
what?
She made it clear she wasn't happy.
Yeah, she wasn't happy. But
I didn't have the detail. I wasn't there when.
Yeah, I know you came late. But guess what? I spoke to people. People saw me. Majority of the people who came to me felt that I asked the right questions. The other people felt that I was. Obi said I was trying to be funny. I wasn't trying to be funny. The other people said I wasn't nice to her. But I didn't think. As far as I'm concerned, I think nobody in any of the governments we've had since 1999 can come out and say that they succeeded in doing what? In what? and the country is the way it is.
Yeah. So you're also known for a certain in your persona in the Dr. Damages, but also in your true identity as, say, the host of 90 Minute Africa. You are known for a certain kind of acerbic take on issues, a kind of irreverent take, say, in your criticism of uh, of pastors and overseers
Oh,
and
I love
people of
pastors.
very. So you've run into a maelstrom of controversy from some of the skits that you have done mocking. Um, uh,
I'm not mocking them. I was just showing what they did
mm,
so that people will see. That's all.
yes, yes.
Okay. I don't want to say another. There's something else about Obi that another encounter with Obi. Let me use another person as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So, like Pastor Apostle Suleiman,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the one making him to do the things he's doing.
Mm.
I'm not the one putting him on the front pages of newspapers.
So,
So
but
once you are,
you
yeah,
amplify, and you
once
magnify.
no, I don't. I make it clear. People don't understand things until you
Yeah.
make it clear to them.
Mm-hmm.
So they just take the story.
Mm-hmm.
Apostle Suleiman is accused of this, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to make it people understand what
Mm-hmm.
it means. See, a good example is really like the government. Let's say Tinubu. Okay, Tinubu is spending some billions to buy new cars and fix the tires of the ones he has.
Mm-hmm.
To some people, it's just Tinubu spending billions
Mm-hmm.
money. But if they know that that money could maybe fix hospital for
Mm-hmm.
them, that money could fix their school,
Mm-hmm.
they will start seeing it in a different light. But
Yes.
for now, they just know that that's what presidents do. They
Do.
all do that.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to make them see the connection. So that's all
Mm-hmm.
I do. I'm just not
So,
highlighting it.
so you're insisting that you are otherwise
I'm a
harmless.
nice guy.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, we'll check. We'll
It's just
check.
that people are not used to that. In America,
Yes.
it's a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that Jonathan came on my show when he was president.
Well,
I tried.
you did your Jonathan
I
thing. So,
tried.
so
I
you
tried.
manufactured Jonathan and you
Yeah,
manufactured
he didn't
Buhari on
come,
your
so we
own.
had to make him. We have to.
Yes,
Now
yes,
we're doing the same thing with Tinubu. Now we
mm-hmm.
have a Tinubu character that
Yes,
we write speeches for him to make.
yes, yes,
He comes out and speak weekly to
yeah,
people. We
yeah,
write since he's not talking, we are writing the one for him,
yeah,
and we are getting him to talk. So this
yeah. And of course, we've got into trouble a lot with different groups, the pro Biafra group. Um, um,
oh yeah.
Again, because of the kinds of questions, the kinds of skepticism that you exhibit toward their project.
You question
So, so,
everything.
so people, yeah. So you get a lot of pushback. You get a lot of insults. People call you all kinds of names, right? Some people will be a bit frazzled if they invited that level of venomous attacks from different sectors that have taken offense at what you say or the persona that you project. How do you take all of that pushback and even insults?
I have a lawyer who went through my social media,
Mm-hmm.
and he was telling me that the cyber bullying law, the one they use to arrest people now,
Mm-hmm.
that I can actually use it to arrest a lot of people who have been abusing me. No. It's I think I'm cooked now. I don't even I like I like all the comments.
Yes.
Personally, I go and make sure that because if you think what I said is so important that you have to write a comment.
Yes.
You deserve at least for me to like.
Acknowledgement.
Yeah, and
Yes.
people do write me sometimes when I have time. I write back. I say, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate this. And they are looking for fights. They want
Yes.
to fight, and I'm thanking them for.
What's the favorite insult that you've received?
Oh, um, I don't remember. I've been called every name in the books. Now, you know the comments I make to people.
Yes.
Tell me something I've not had before. This one's old. This that I'm idiot. I'm a stupid man.
That is old.
My papa is from the north. Must be Hausa man that get back. These are old things. You give me something new I can put in my diary. Because there's some that people will write. I'll say, okay, this is good. I'll put this in my diary. This is no. I think I'm not worried about anything. There's nothing anybody will call me now that would make me. And I've received threats. Let me tell you this one. This one is when we did the Oyedepo slapping Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
When Oyedepo slapped that woman, that small girl in his church, we did a parody of that.
She said, "I'm a wench or something.
I'm a witch for Jesus." So we did a parody. We decided because people didn't understand the meaning of that. People just laughed at it and say, "Oh, yeah, that was slapped." Maybe the woman had mentally, they just laughed at that. So we decided that we are going to have Oyedepo, somebody play Oyedepo for us, slapping Good Lord Jonathan, which is me. And when we did that, we did that, people now got the real meaning of a bishop slapping somebody, because now it's Jonathan that
he's been slapped. Mm-hmm.
And we just posted a picture of the scene on social media. Can you imagine? In 1 hour we had 1,000 comments. Half of them were people were raining abuses that I was going to die. I won't see tomorrow. So I was careful for the next 1 week, so that
that
you won't say that it was because of them that I died. So I was careful when I'm crossing the road, just to make sure I don't make them happy.
That they didn't fulfill their prophecy.
Yeah, because they would think that they were the cause of the reason.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, had you died,
people prayed for me that it won't be good for me, that I won't see 2012 or something. It was,
and of course you rushed and without announcing it, you went and apologized to the bishop, didn't you?
No, I wish I would see the no. There's no way. I met some people that were characters on the show, and they take it. They are not. It's the people around them that get it.
Did you ever meet Buhari?
I met Buhari. Yeah, I met Buhari. He didn't know who I was. I met
Buhari. So Buhari did not know that he was meeting a Buhari.
No. Yeah, I interviewed Buhari first. That's one. Before he became president, I met him when he was president here in New York, and I asked him a question. Oh, he was so mad. I've never seen anybody that mad.
Wow.
So
what was the question?
This was a press conference in somewhere in the city during the United Nations. So he didn't want to take questions. And the then Minister for Foreign Affairs, Adiola, was able to convince them to allow 2 or 3 questions.
Yes.
So Adeshina, thinking that I was a nice guy, called me and said, "Rudolph, you go."
Yes.
So I asked Buhari about Biafra. Hey, how dare you? He came all the way from Nigeria to New York, and you carried your Igbo or more Igbo.
Yes.
He just couldn't believe it, that the first question was about Biafra. And it was a nice question. I was saying something about for people who are just like you were asking me here, people who were tired of Nigeria, who now feels that the only solution is to leave Nigeria and be part of the foreign country. What are you going to say? How are you going to bring them back into the fold? I don't know. Something very nice question. But he just had Biafra. And just couldn't. It was unbelievable. He couldn't take it.
Yes.
Yeah. So but the point is,
and then Jonathan.
I never met Jonathan.
Okay, you never did.
Yeah, but let me tell you this story. This is an interesting story.
Please.
When Jonathan came, to New York. I actually went to see him. I tried to see these people, on one-on-one basis. So I knew Ruben in Nigeria when we were in Nigeria. So I called Ruben. I said, look, I want to interview the president. So I went with Tomato Juice Fatima to interview at the hotel. So we got into the hotel. There were SSS, both America's SSS, Nigeria's SSS.
America has its own SSS, right?
Yeah. No, they are there to protect the presidents.
I know. Yes,
so
yes.
it was. So I felt like, wow, how are we going to make it to the hotel, to the room where Ruben was without these SSS guys? So one of them came to me and said, "You are Dr. Damages." I said, "No," because I wasn't dressed like Dr. Damages. I said, "No, not me." He looked beside me and saw Fatima.
Tomato Juice.
Said, "Tomato Juice."
Yeah.
At that point, I knew that there was no way I could. So the guy whispered to my ears. He said, "You're doing a good job. You're doing a nice job." I was shocked. This is SSS, Nigerian SSS. I said, okay, so the message is getting to them. So we got to the elevator and I saw Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She looked at me like, because we have the Ngo baby, I used to think from Ngo baby.
Yes.
Those are the good old days.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I wanted to interview Jonathan. I wanted we even offered if they want to come, even Ruben, to come to the studio in the city so that we interview them. But this is the way that if they are good politicians, they would have done things like that. But the people around them are the problem. They always think that they are too big, to relate with people. If people know you one-on-one and see that you are probably not as bad as the image we see,
yes,
maybe, but they are not.
So let's get to America.
Oh, my favorite country in the world.
Yes. A few years ago, I began to reckon up my life, and it occurred to me that I had lived longer in America, at least nominally, than I had in Nigeria. So, in statistical terms, I've spent more time in America than I did in Nigeria. Emotionally, I still think of my hometown and of Nigeria as home. See, but I have a particular attachment to America, which is a different question. So the first question that I'd like to ask you is, how would you describe your relationship with America? Having lived here for how long have you lived here? For example?
I can't remember, more than 20 years.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, getting to 30 years actually in America. Yeah, I've been here for a long time. So remember I mentioned that growing up when I was a kid, at 5 a.m. my dad was a teacher, so he woke up. He woke up at as early as 5 a.m. and he would turn on the BBC. He would go from BBC to Voice of America. And if you listen to Voice of America, I think they still do that today in Africa because we don't get it here in America. They tell you stories about America. The Making of a Nation. One of their most favorite story was The Making of a Nation. So they will start from
American propaganda, which we didn't know it was propaganda at the time. Yeah.
But for me, it's history. They might paint it in a different, paint it the way to favor the telling of the story. But that was how I learned about Abraham Lincoln, or George Washington, whatever is in the history book, the basic stories. And then they would also, the news from the Voice of America, they always start by saying Beirut, that time, Beirut, Lebanon, whatever is going on there, they tell you. They mention all the trouble spots in the world. They tell you what's going on there. So I learned about America and their story from the Voice of America. So I felt that America was more organized than Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
I was intrigued by their Declaration of Independence,
Mm-hmm.
and how they've been struggling to live up to that creed. So yeah, so that was my I wasn't I didn't I didn't make an effort to come to America at first. It wasn't like while I was in Nigeria I was trying to come to America. But if I was offered, I would have loved to come
Come.
to America. But
Mm-hmm.
I went to the UK first.
Mm-hmm.
It was from the UK that I came to America. So
Mm-hmm.
so I liked America as an ideal, you know, as an ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And I
It,
think
how has that ideal held up? This your vision of America, that vision that you glimpse from listening to the Voice of America, and that you encountered in books, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
How has it held up or not?
I no, of course not. But I wrote a novel, published novel called Death on Mount Trashmore. So it's my image of America. So my
Mm-hmm.
character had this ideal image of America,
Mm-hmm.
but then he died on Mount Trashmore.
Mm-hmm.
Trashmore, if you know, there are many Trashmores in America now.
Mm-hmm.
What they did, it was in Virginia Beach, the one I used in my novel, was a place they were dumping trash.
Mm-hmm.
So at a point, they decided to transform the place and turned it into a mountain. So they covered it with sand, planted
Mm-hmm.
trees, flowers, had fish pond, turned it into a park. It's beautiful. It's still there,
Mm-hmm.
So, but one day, the the poisons, the
Mm. Toxins.
toxins inside the mountain, buried inside,
Mm.
started seeping into the fish pond,
Water. Mm.
and the fish in the water started dying. And Virginia Pilots, which is the newspaper in Norfolk, Virginia, wrote a headline: "Death on Mount Trashmore."
Mm.
And that became the headline of what happened to my character, who
Mm.
followed the American dream, the ideal, the America he was seeing from outside, which was like seeing the mountain, that beautiful Mount Trashmore, you
Mm.
know, but underneath is
It's toxins
toxic.
and
Yeah,
poison and so
yeah.
on.
So that's how America is.
Mm.
That's how America is.
So
Most
sort
people,
of a contradiction, a
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
If you look
yeah.
at it from outside, you see that beautiful mountain.
Hmm.
Where you can play and there are flowers and things. But
Sure. So America has just had one of its, I think, its most interesting political developments in an election where uh, the ostensible candidate and incumbent president had to leave unceremoniously, and the vice president, who was never reckoned to be in the running, was elevated without any primary. Where a former president who lost in 2020 and who then orchestrated what some people have come to see as an unprecedented challenge to the idea of smooth transition of power in America, and was facing prosecutions on account of that, and on other charges in America, but was able to pull off what some people consider perhaps the most stunning comebacks in at least recent political history in America. I know that in the run up to that election, you had been part of a conversation where you voiced, where you joined a particular strain of criticism of this ultimately triumphant candidate, former president and now president elect Donald J. Trump. Um, and in a skit that you did, you, in your very irreverent way, even suggested that. Trump was a more pernicious candidate than Hitler. And I do know from monitoring some spaces that there was a lot of pushback from some Nigerians because, a lot of Nigerians actually admire Trump. So, can you speak to that moment when you intervened? What occasioned your intervention and the terms in which you couched that intervention, and whether so let's start from there.
So I consider myself a follower of Trump. I live in New York. Everybody who lives in New York, I don't
And
mean,
you've written books on him,
yeah,
by the way,
exactly,
which yeah.
exactly. So I've read a lot about Trump. I've
Mhm,
followed him. I wrote 2 books now about
mhm,
Trump.
mhm,
I know about Trump more than most people. So um, so I know him. I know him, and we in New York we know him. So when he came, I'm happy he won. Because my books maybe finally will sell. Because people didn't buy the book. I was disappointed. It took me a long time to write
mhm.
that book.
And the title of the first book,
It was The Secret Letters.
Diaries. Was it
No,
letters or
letters.
diaries?
Yeah,
Okay.
letters. Secret
Mhm,
letters of Donald Trump, aged. So I try to imagine him writing letters to
mhm,
people.
mhm.
We see him
Different characters.
different
Yeah,
characters. We
yeah.
see him commenting on people, tweeting that time.
Mhm,
So I imagine that maybe he was writing letters too. And what
mhm.
will he write in the letters? I had so much hope in this book.
It's really
It took a long
it's a
time.
very rip cracking,
Yeah, it
funny,
took a lot from
irreverent
me.
collection. Yes, yes.
Sometimes I say, if people don't, it took a lot from me. If I had written novels, maybe they would have done better. I don't know
Yeah.
why they didn't, and nobody paid
Well,
attention.
maybe after this conversation, people are going to go out
It's
there on Amazon and pick
unbelievable.
up the book. Yeah.
The time.
Mhm,
So first of all,
mhm,
you have to know what happened, and then you have to go to imagine you are in the mind of Donald Trump,
mhm,
and then you are now writing like Donald Trump. You
mhm,
are using his expressions. You are. It took a lot, right? I would
mhm,
have written more than a Bible or
mhm,
something, if I had
mhm,
spent that
mhm,
time.
mhm,
Anyway, but so I know Trump. Um, of course, I'm looking at America as an outsider.
mhm,
Okay, even though I've lived here for so long, I'm
mhm,
looking at America as an outsider. I'm looking at America as somebody who grew up under a dictatorship. I'm looking at America from the ideal that I started listening to when I was a kid, to what I was seeing happening in recent times.
mhm,
From the time I came here and up close, you're now seeing things that you didn't know. Okay, they didn't tell you on Voice of America things about America.
mhm,
So, and progressively, we see, even though we say good old days, I can say that the leaders that they had in the 50s and 60s were better than the ones now or this period. Okay. But if you were a black person in the 50s and 60s, you wouldn't say that America was
mhm,
better than today. Okay. So, but the point was that there were 2 things that happened with me and Trump and the story. I don't want America to collapse. I don't want America to fail. I don't want America to be another third world country. Even though historically we know that that's what will happen. Just like Britain
mhm,
had their time and they went down. Russia,
mhm,
empires come and go. The American empire will eventually leave the stage for other
mhm,
countries to take over.
Mm-hmm.
I know that, but I don't want it to happen so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that all the attributes, all the things that I saw in Nigeria that made Nigeria not to function, I was beginning to see in America. Now, there are multiple things depending on your political ideology. You can see social issues, you can see political issues, you can see economic issues. There are so many issues you can look at. Um, I'm looking at the fabric, what I think was missing in Nigeria, and I was seeing it breaking down in America. So, and it was not clear. I mean, it wasn't frightening until Trump became president,
Okay.
and I saw that. Um, he wasn't the first president that would leave the speech written for him to say whatever he wanted to say. Um, but he's I don't want to characterize him by saying intelligence quotient. I don't want to go there, but he went where no president had gone to, and initially it was funny for the press, for the media, for the elite. He was able to push away from the stage all the Republican elite. He created the party in his own image.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, I could see, then I started looking at other places in the world where they transformed, maybe for good or for evil. You need lead this is when you have leaders like that, when they come in place and all the norms, they step on all the norms, what you consider norms. Um, it's like a movie to me. If you read history, how empires collapse, the Roman Empire, the British Empire, Ottoman Empire, is playing out in slow motion. We don't see it because we live in this world. We are here today. It's like I do give example with slavery when I teach post-colonial African history. This class, this semester that ended, I just told them students, I said, those who were living during slave times, the time of transatlantic slave trade, they did not, they did not see, maybe they didn't care, but they didn't see the horror that people are doing this in their name, that they are
Mm-hmm.
fellow human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So there are things happening to us now. We don't see it. The Germans, during Hitler's time, they had all the justification.
Mm-hmm.
They had all the justification why they are going to kill these 6 million Jews. It was clear to them. Even people who didn't support it couldn't, very few were able to come out and say, we should resist this.
Mm-hmm.
So, knowing all these things, I was looking at what Trump was doing to the norms, to the core of what I felt had kept America what it was. And it frightened me. So,
Could you I'd like you to specify some of those norms that he was. So you've spoken about him going off script,
yeah,
maybe in speaking,
yeah,
which interestingly is actually what for many of his voters, many of his supporters, gives him that common touch that um, I agree that I had lived in this country and I saw occasions where one misspeech, one wrong thing that a politician said ended their political run, right? But Trump could say, not only could you reveal something bad that he has said, but he could stand on a podium in a debate and, you know, dismiss one of the candidates' wives as ugly. And the people just sort of say, "Wow, this is so refreshing." And I think, yeah. But I'd like to hear sort of your take because that sort of disturbed me, right?
okay, okay,
That level. But I like to get a clearer sense of the things that you're calling norms because I like to play perhaps a devil's advocate in some
Yeah.
sense.
So my first constituency is the media,
Mm-hmm.
the political space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we already know what's going on with the media across the world, the
Mm-hmm.
challenges,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the way the internet and information flow change and transform the media.
Mm-hmm.
So every country is struggling on how to adjust. Um, we were having a debate yesterday. One of the things that people don't know that happened in this country um, is that in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, there were only three radio TV stations or four, and everybody is watching that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is hearing the same story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was easy. It was very possible for the country to be unified under when the source of information is the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that the model is the best or anything,
Mm-hmm.
but we're in transition now. This is a
Mm-hmm.
transitional period
Mm-hmm.
where you can decide now that all I want to hear is from the conservative side. I can decide that I don't want to hear anything from a black person. Maybe there's a channel that we just give you, show you white people.
Mm-hmm.
So the society is broken down. Okay. So in this is the period where, and then we have, or we had a president is coming back, who will stand up and say and point at the media and say these are the enemies of the people. It is inconceivable 20 years ago
Mm-hmm.
that a president or even a candidate for president will look at the fourth estate and tell the people these are the enemies of the people, and people will hail him no matter what the imperfection, the flaws of the media.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the reason to say that these are the enemies of the people. It troubled me because we know what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
It has happened before in history when there is no, the media stand as, you can say, a check to the political structure. And
Mm-hmm.
now, you know what is funny about what is happening? The the people like us who express these concerns, we are calm now. We are quiet. We've resolved that. What are we going to do? There's nothing we can do. But what people on the other side, the Trump side, are not seeing is that these norms that are being broken down, it's not going to be their own guy that will be able to utilize it to his own benefit.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a time, it may take 10 years, when a Democrat will become president where there are no norms anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the ruling of the Supreme Court, there are less checks today for a president than before. So, what it means is that we could get a mad person on the other side because there's no limit, there's no guarantee that the Democrats will keep bringing good people, people who are at least abide by the norms.
Mm-hmm.
There could be a mad person who will utilize that, and it will be more damage to the country. I'm a registered independent. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I try to, so my worry is I don't want America to lose its position in a drastic manner.
Mm-hmm.
It will be good the way it happened with Britain, a gradual process. And it's going to be gradual, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't know what could happen that will change it. Maybe a big war or something. But we hope that it will be a gradual transition that will keep the world balanced.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not, if we lose America, then it to be a different world for our children and our children's
Good,
children.
good. Let me, as I said, I'd like to play a little devil's advocate here. Um,
Maybe we should take a break. You
okay.
don't think so? Because for the purpose of people who will watch this, let's take a break.
Okay.
I have a video that they can watch a little bit, something that will be of interest to you. When we come back, we will continue. I know you are eager to talk about this because it's a topic that you enjoy. So let's take a break and then we'll be right back.
Okay then.
All right.
Wow.
So that's interesting for those who are watching.
Ikide will be very, very jealous
About what?
about my dancing
Because
the guy can't dance to save his life. He keeps posting useless videos of his own dancing, and
Ikide?
Ikide, yeah. Look at him, like a worm.
All right. We'll put them side by side and then let the viewers.
Of course, I'm the winner. You know, as everybody knows, Ikide dances like a worm that you have poured salt on. You know. So
yeah.
So so you speak about norms, and you speak about Trump pointing to the media and saying these are the enemies, right? And that kind of attack seems to resonate with his supporters. But I think that there is a fuller picture. So disturbing as that take is, I think that there is a picture that speaks perhaps to the absence of balance in the media that then makes that point pointed accusation of the media as the enemy that makes it resonate with some people. And this is what I mean, that America is in a plague of the breaking of norms, and that Trump is not the cause, but simply a symptom of a much broader phenomenon that we're seeing. And what do I mean? When Trump got elected in 2016, the media and every institution in this country, including the intelligence community, put it out there that he had colluded with Russia, and that this accounted for a surprise victory because everybody fully expected that Hillary Clinton was on her way to coronation as a president. Trump, you know, shocked the nation and won. And for 3 years in his presidency, the refrain was that he achieved this through collusion with the Russians. And every day, watching the television news and so on, and they told us that the evidence was now a mountain and that is overwhelming. And ultimately, Robert Mueller was, was made a special counsel to look at that question. And it turns out that there was no evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia. And so some people said, oh, but Russia meddled. And the truth is that Russia has meddled in as many American elections as they can manage, just like America meddles in Russian elections, America meddles in Israeli elections, right? Meddles in Nigerian elections. So Russia has always tried to meddle in American elections. So it didn't start with Trump, right? But Russia, I suspect, again, I don't know, but I suspect that Russia will meddle in American election to create the kind of ultimate friction that happened in America. In other words, to sow discord in America, much more so than saying we want to elect this man. Because if Russia actually wanted to elect somebody, they will go for somebody who is more predictable, i.e., Hillary. You know what you're going to get from Hillary, good and bad, much more so than from an unpredictable Trump. Okay? And we were told through this Steele dossier that was leaked to the media of these salacious details that Trump was somehow in Moscow during one of the Miss Universe pageants when he was running it. And that he had found out that maybe the Obamas had stayed in the same suite where he was staying, and he asked some women who were quote unquote sex workers to start peeing on the bed and so on. So we were told of all this, that Putin had these salacious videos with which he was going to blackmail Trump. And I think that those lies, because they ultimately were lies, because the media was claiming that Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, had been in Prague holding some meetings and so on, that there was some link between Alpha Bank and Trump, doing some kind of back wall communication and so on. The fact that the media would tell these lies, I think, or so on the one hand, you find the media telling lies about Trump, which turned out to be lies, because Mueller, apart from Mueller, everybody else on the team, there was Andrew Weissman, who voted for Hillary, was at the Hillary campaign headquarters on election day to celebrate, and went away disappointed. It was the number 2 person on the Mueller team. Mueller came from the never Trump wing of the Republican Party. So people point to the fact that he's a Republican, but he's clearly part of the Republican establishment that didn't care much for Trump. So you find the media lying against Trump on the one hand, and then let's use a more recent example. I saw in 2020, as Joe Biden was running for president, it was COVID, so he was mostly quiet, so he would put out videos. But I saw evidence of cognitive diminishment. But the media covered for him. The media gave him a vibrant, bill of health. In the end, he won the election. And then as president, he will come out and sometimes start shaking hands with the air, sometimes wander off, sometimes, be unable to articulate things and so on. But the media kept telling us that there was nothing to see here. We must assume that this guy was fit and as sharp as a nail, as some people said. And so he, as he was trying, because I actually thought it was going to be a quick transitional president, that he would be a one-time, but then we found out he was running. And the media kept telling us that he was in control of things and that he'd brought maturity to the White House and that he was capable of doing another 4 years, until the debate happened. And it was clear, excuse me, that he didn't have it. And then the media started manufacturing excuses, or he traveled intercontinentally, and so on and so forth. But just recently, in the last few days, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have come out with reports. In the case of the Wall Street Journal, they interviewed 50 people close to Biden, and they have given a very frightening portrait of the man's cognitive decline, that he's held only 9 cabinet meetings in his 4 years. and that when he held these meetings, cabinet members were asked to write out their questions beforehand. It wasn't a meeting that was open to the public, and then replies were written for him. That he's really not participated in much in the governance. So, and up until the debate, the media was assuring us that this man was in very good cognitive shape. So that so what I'm pointing out to you then is that the media in this country, you spoke about the time when the media landscape was different. Americans used to believe Walter Cronkite was like a deity. When he said something, Americans took it to be gospel truth. I came to this country and began to watch certain programs. I'll watch 60 Minutes religiously. If I couldn't be home to watch 60 Minutes, I had it taped. And then 60 Minutes and every program told us, remember that 51 intelligence officials in this country issued a statement saying that the contents of a laptop that Hunter Biden left abandoned had the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. And there were former officials, still contractors for the CIA and the intelligence community. There is no way the intelligence officials who are incumbent, who are serving now, did not know that they were lying. Okay? So on the one hand, you find something false about Trump that is trumpeted to the world as true. Then you find out something that is true about Biden, his cognitive decline, that is trumpeted to the world as false. So when Trump then points to the media and says, they are your enemies, in other words, they're in the business of deceiving you. What the media has done in abandoning what we knew to be objectivity, and by the way, when Trump took over, as somebody who has worked in the media in this country, I was on the editorial board of a major American newspaper. I was disturbed when I heard professors of journalism, to hear practitioners of journalism give talks, write in the papers openly and say, we have to abandon objectivity because Trump represented a unique threat. So journalists were then encouraged to be activists rather than serving the truth. So that a lot of the journalists who were proclaiming that Trump had colluded with Russia knew that to be a lie, but they felt anything we can do to undermine this man is fine. A lot of the journalists saying that Biden was fit physically and mentally knew that to be a lie, but they felt that anything to shore up the candidate who would defeat Trump was right. So don't you think that given this larger context, that it's not Trump solely who is wrecking norms, but that there are so many other people, including the political people around Biden, because the Democrats did not have to inflict the wound on themselves that they did this time around, right? Kamala Harris was a uniquely weak candidate. She left in 2020, she left the field polling 2% or less. That's when she left. I think she was the first person to drop out, right? There was a reason that the more, and when she came out initially, she rose. But the more people found out about her and what she represented, the less attracted they felt to her. And the fact that the Democrats told Biden, because I actually believe that Biden, with all his impairment, would have done better against Trump, that he would have won some of the battleground states, right? So Trump has done some really questionable and really unattractive things, the way he talks, right? Even his language, which for me, as somebody who loves language, Trump's language is at a very low level. of articulation. But I think that given the lies that have been told against him and told by people who knew better, so if somebody makes a mistake, it's forgivable. But if the media would tell a lie consistently against one party or against one candidate, knowing that to be a lie, I think that's why when he says they are the enemy to you, that his followers say, yeah, because they're trying to deceive us, they're trying to misinform us, they're no longer playing the role, they're no longer keeping to the norm of journalism, which is to inform. Yeah.
Let me just say this. Historically in America and most places in the world, the media protects the presidency. If you remember Kennedy, if you remember Roosevelt, the media here in America protected them. So you'll find a president who is sick. It's not the first time that they will cover it up. On a wheelchair, they will cover it up.
But they didn't protect Trump, though.
Yeah, well,
nor did they protect George Bush. So let's be clear.
No. Okay.
I think that the media in this country, that media practitioners tend to be liberal in their politics.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
So in the 60s, it was different. Okay. What's his name? Nixon was a dour man who wasn't beloved of the media. They did not protect him. Okay. So when you talk about being protected, it's typically
let's not there are different aspects of this story, this role of the media. There is personal stories, okay, and then there is what you call official secrets, and they all have it. There are so many things. Every presidency, doesn't matter, even if Obama, it's Obama. Every presidency,
yes,
they have the issue of needing to have things covered up by the media. There was one, I don't want. So, and we don't know. There are certain things we will not know until maybe 100 years from now about all these presidencies. So there's that aspect that is going on and has always been like that. What happened was that recently, starting from, I think it started with Clinton, there was this breakdown in that, of course, it happened when the media split. And there was a split of the media, and everybody now, there are multiple media and they all want stories.
Yes.
So it became difficult for even the presidency of America to cover up anything. Just like we're seeing in Nigeria now, where, one of the things that brought about the law, the cyberbullying law, is that they could no longer, they already bought the media, control the press in Nigeria, but they can't control the online media. They can't control the bloggers. So they have to come up with a law that will help them silence them, because they can't bribe them. You can't bribe the one in London, the one in New York, the one in Alabama, So anyway, but that's the same thing in America. So because you now have the CNN of this world, you have some media houses that do not even have anybody in the White House. So there's no way you can tell them not to publish what they have. So that was where it broke down. Clinton didn't have an easy press. In the past, they would have covered up everything about Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, but it wasn't possible at that point. So from that point, I don't think George Bush had any personal issue in the press as much as.
Well, he was widely marked for his absence of intelligence, which had a credit to it.
That's not.
But the media, of course, covered when George Bush wanted to invade Iraq. The media knew that. I mean, some sections of the media knew that Saddam Hussein had no weapons of mass destruction. They covered it up because
no, they used the media. I think
the military industrial complex,
they used the media to accomplish. Yeah, I think the media was used in that case, and these are, I think those, if we actually study what happened in this country and the media. I think those are instances where the trust got broken.
Got broken.
And
Yes.
yeah, because when the media is now the one exposed, if you
Yeah.
look at what
Yes.
happened to Libby,
Mhm.
is it Libby,
Yes.
the
Yes.
Chinese
Yes.
chief of staff,
Yes.
you
Yes.
find out that people eventually felt
Mhm.
that, okay, these
Mhm.
people are using us at this point,
Mhm.
and we're
Yes.
the
Yes.
four guys. So, but the point I'm talking about, so most things that are happening in any society, not just America, they
Mhm.
don't start in one day,
Mhm.
but there is a sense of escalation.
Mhm.
Any issue you bring up now
Mhm.
was escalated by Trump.
Mhm.
Part of it, you can give it to him, was that he was an outsider to the
Was
political
an outsider.
outsider.
Mhm.
But he's not the first outsider that got in there. He was not just an outsider. He was somebody who was brash, who
Mhm.
was he wasn't used to taking instruction from people.
Mhm.
Something that people don't even understand. That Trump,
Mhm.
all his life,
Mhm.
Trump never worked for anybody,
Mhm.
other than the father.
Mhm.
Trump didn't have to take,
Mhm.
no from anybody. I
Yeah.
don't really think you can say that somebody had controlled Trump.
Mhm.
So those are part of what made him what he became, and
Mhm.
what also made him a scary person with so much power.
Mhm.
Because if Obama got a phone call from Edward Kennedy,
Mhm.
Obama will listen.
Mhm.
Obama can pause, but there is nobody as of today in
Mhm.
America that will call Trump and say, "Don't do this."
Do this. Mhm.
That Trump, if Trump is determined to do that, that Trump will stop.
Mhm.
There's nobody, and
Mhm.
that's the kind of thing that is scary
Mhm.
for me.
Mhm. Well, there are moments, though. There are some classified documents that he wanted. For example, he had promised to release the John F. Kennedy assassination files, right? The intelligence community prevailed on him not to, right? He had wanted to even have a commission on vaccines, childhood vaccinations. Bill Gates has said that he called him and said, don't go there, and he didn't. But let me sort of go to another moment, which I think is even more egregious, sort of the things that the ways in which the media. So I agree with you that Trump has been a norm wrecker. Okay, but my argument simply, I hope it will be understood, is that there are other sectors that have broken the norms, right, as well. And I'm going to cite two. So in 2020, when Trump was running for re-election, Atlantic magazine came out with a piece alleging that Trump was in France and was scheduled to go and honor American soldiers buried in France at a cemetery, military cemetery, and that Trump said he would not go because they died and they were suckers and losers. And of course, that so it quoted four sources, anonymous sources who were there, who were present. I read that article. I read excerpts of that. I would not read that kind of article because it was clear to me with the exercise of critical intelligence that this was false. I knew that if there were up to four people present in 2018, and Trump said, I'm not going to go and honor Americans who died in World War II and are buried in France, that it will not take 5 minutes before that was spread throughout the American media. So the fact that this was coming out in 2020 already suggested to me that this was a made up, a hoax. So the newspaper quoted, these four anonymous sources. Before you knew it, several other TV stations and newspapers said, oh, that they had independently confirmed that this happened, right? Then about 19 or 20 officials who were there issued a statement, including John Bolton, who had been fired by Trump, who wrote a book where he said very, very dismissive things about Trump. So no love lost between him and Trump. And John Bolton said if that had happened, that he was there, that if that had happened, he would have handed in his letter of resignation immediately and revealed to Americans what had happened. Indeed, that what had happened was that Trump was to go. It was raining massively. The Secret Service told Trump, we can't take you up in a helicopter because of the rain, it's dangerous. And the place where the cemetery is the way you get it is through a small winding road. So if you go there on your way there, your way out, if something happens, we have no way of evacuating you. So it was a call by the Secret Service that he shouldn't go. The media invented a lie, one magazine, and this was the man who wrote the story was the man who was leading during Bush, saying that yes, there was overwhelming evidence that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. So what I'm trying to show to you then is that there is a pattern where the media joins in with the political establishment to sell lies to the American people, whether it's on going to war against Iraq unjustly, that destroyed the whole country, has destroyed its cultural heritage, which is considerable, destroyed Iraqi and the American lives, or whether it's to protect Biden in 2020, and then 51 intelligence officials write a letter claiming that a computer was the product of Russian disinformation when they knew that it was. I don't think that one of those people who signed the letters, which was basically curated by Anthony Blinken, the current Secretary of State, I don't think that one of them was confused that this was real. And as you know, the same content of the computer that was claimed to be Russian in origin was now used to secure a conviction of Hunter Biden in a court, and it was going to be used in a different trial before that he pled, entered a guilty plea on. So that's one moment. I think that there was another moment, but part of what has disturbed me. So you talk about the media and its role. The Biden administration, the most frightening thing for me that they did was to propose to set up a disinformation bureau out of the Department of Homeland Security. The fact that mainstream media journalists, a lot of them, were writing in favor of this, for me, is unforgivable. Because governments are the most effective and efficient spreaders of falsehood. Governments strategically have to deceive the population and have to deceive the rest of the world. So when a government is saying to us, we're going to set up a bureau that will determine what is true and what is false information. And we're now going to have, as happened with Twitter, with Facebook, with LinkedIn, where doctors, scientists were saying during COVID that COVID might have come from a lab, and they were removed. Their posts were removed. They were called conspiracy theorists. Meanwhile, 2 out of 3 major American departments, agencies, had actually reached the same conclusion, but it was all covered up. So I think it's unforgivable from the point of view of being somebody who has worked in American media that Biden considered setting up a disinformation bureau. I would much rather have what we have in social media. People complain that Twitter has now become a site of misinformation, right? I think Twitter has become better. There is a lot of people every day who post misinformation, but on every issue where you post something that is false, there are people who have better information who then countermand you with better information. I don't think that the government should ever come in on social media. Newspapers is a different thing, because newspapers, if you write false information on somebody, the person can actually sue you, right? So it's better. They should be regulated. But on social media, if somebody wants to say that the earth is flat, okay, please let the person say so. Because there are a lot of sound scientific minds who will go there and demonstrate that the earth is not flat. Okay? And at any rate, if you are afraid that some people might then believe that the earth is flat, that's fine, because they will believe it regardless of whether you allow people to post it or not. So anyway, so it's a way of saying that a lot of norms. So one more uh, thing that I wanted to speak about is talking about the breaking of norms, and I think that we should yeah, maybe I should pause at this point because I just wanted to talk to you. And so the question that I'd like to ask now is, looking to the next 4 years, you've seen some of the people that Trump is nominating for his cabinet. What kind of America do you expect to see?
I've written all I need to write about Trump, what will
Mhm,
happen.
mhm,
I actually wrote an article of before the election about the election of 2028,
mhm.
the day after.
Yes.
And in that article, I imagined Trump having to leave the White House.
Mhm.
Finally, um, I imagined that it will require getting
A
some
crane
getting
to.
some Republicans to go there and tell him that it's time to go.
You think he's going to try and stay
If
beyond his
he's
term?
healthy, if he's healthy, he
I don't
will.
think
He
so.
will.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's there's something that I think at this point everybody should prepare for the worst so that we
Mm,
don't get surprised.
yes. No,
And
no.
I've
I don't.
prepared for it.
Yeah. No, I think that a lot of the things that were said about Trump, that much as Trump is um is a problematic person, right? Um, much as he's problematic, I think that a lot of the claims made about him, that he's Hitler, he's going to be
Exaggeration.
he's going to be a
Let me
dictator,
let
he's
me
not
give
going to
you.
leave power, there will be no elections
No,
and
no,
so
no.
on. No,
Okay,
no, but
leave those ones. No,
because if the truth is, if we believe that
mm.
Trump somehow can stop a transition, another election, then America is not worth fighting for. Then he
No,
might as well be a
wait.
dictator.
It's not going to happen that way.
Yeah.
Hitler did not wake up and stop the democracy in Germany. No,
Mm,
it didn't happen that way. So you have to, for them to do that, you have to provide a justification. You
mm,
have to provide something that for people. You talked about his people.
mhm,
Remember his people, the people supporting Trump,
mhm,
that are when he points at the media and says these are the enemy of the people. They were there in the country before. They've always been in the country.
mhm,
They've always been suspicious of the media. They've always known the media flaws and the mistakes.
mhm,
But they now have someone
mhm,
who is reflecting their
mhm.
viewpoint,
Okay.
someone who has defeated,
Mhm,
remember what Trump accomplished.
mhm.
He defeated
The
the
Republican establishment.
establishment who were
Then-
stopping those
mm,
people
yes.
who were always there. They've always been in the Republican
Mhm,
Party,
mhm,
but they didn't get a chance.
mhm,
You can't see Trump, Bush,
mhm,
Junior or Senior, or even McCain saying
mhm,
that the media is the enemy of the people.
mhm. And surviving it.
The issues were there. The issues were there.
Mhm.
They could have.
I don't think the issues were there to the same scale.
No, no.
I don't think the media.
No,
I don't
no.
think
What are you talking?
so.
What do you call scale? Scale is simply
Yes.
that Trump is amplifying them.
No, Rudolph.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Mm.
I don't think that the media said unflattering things about other Republican candidates. We were told that Mitt Romney was going to put black people in chains and so on by Biden. Okay. So, and the media mocked him when he said, when the problem whether he will have women and so on. He said, I have this file, filled with the names of women, and they said, you see, all the women are in your little file, right? So it was mocked on that level. But there is no, and of course, when George Bush won his controversial victory the first time in Florida with the hanging child and so on, so the media did raise a
It,
question about
I
the
want to make sure,
legitimacy.
I want to make sure that you know, because
Mhm,
this is what they call unconscious bias.
mhm,
Okay,
mhm,
I want to make sure that you don't only see
mhm,
when the media is mocking the Republicans,
mm.
uh, but when they mock the Democrats, you don't see that, because
No, I
I,
mhm,
I think
mhm,
the job of the late night
mhm,
hosts,
mhm,
okay,
mhm,
apart from the last time since Trump came in, okay, the
mhm.
job of the late night hosts, there's no way when Clinton was there, I was watching them.
Yeah,
They,
yeah.
there was no mercy on Clinton.
Yeah, but
Okay.
Clinton's offenses, right, were peccadillos. Clinton, his philandering, his thing with Monica Lewinsky, is not of the same order as saying that you had colluded with a foreign power, which is actually an adversary of America, to be installed president in America. That's actually out of the pale. Or to say that you had called American veterans who had passed in World War II suckers and losers. Of course,
But
that was,
hold on.
yeah.
I wanted to say something about that particular
Mhm,
instance.
mhm.
Okay.
Is it about
Why?
what he said about John McCain?
No, yeah, or not just John McCain, that's one, but also what he said on that extra video.
About
Um,
grabbing women?
yeah, grabbing women. What I'm
I-
what I'm saying
Okay.
is this. What I'm
Mhm,
saying is this. Okay, don't you see
mhm,
why um someone who said this about McCain, said
mhm,
this about grabbing women, who said other horrible things about Mandela,
mhm,
that people will believe? I
mhm,
don't know. I don't know the details about how the Atlantic came up with the story and everything. And I
mhm,
know there was a general who came out, but these things I'm not. I think at this
mhm,
point it's not the
mhm.
details. There was a general that came out and said he was there. One person at least came
Mm,
out to say openly. I think.
okay. Okay. I don't know of one person who was on the record.
Yeah, there
I don't know
was.
of
There
one
was a
person.
general. There was a general. Yeah, that
Okay,
was
who was on? Okay,
on
that's
record.
that's
So,
news
but
to
the
me.
point,
But I know that up to
the
19
point
or
I'm making
20.
is,
Mhm,
the point I'm making is that there is a reason why people will believe that. It's totally unbelievable,
mhm,
or if it's coming from any other president, any other
mhm,
time in
mhm,
American
mhm,
history, that
mhm.
somebody will say that. But
Okay.
based on the track record of Trump
Mhm,
and things he said, it was easy for people to believe that
mhm,
probably he did. I don't know the details of
mhm.
that story.
Yeah, but Rudolph, so you just pointed. Of course, there is a certain predictability to Trump, actually, right? So people said, for example, oh, Trump praised Putin. Trump is so narcissistic. If you praise Trump, much as he and Nancy Pelosi have no love lost, if Nancy tomorrow says, "Oh, Trump actually is a great person," the very next minute Trump is going to reciprocate. Trump is like a child, emotionally. If you say something nasty to him, as John McCain attacked him during their run for the, so he looked at him and said, "Oh, you're not a hero. You were captured." It's a very stupid thing to say, but but okay. Look at the one where he talked about that he could come down and grab a woman by her private part, and that nothing will happen. Right? That actually speaks to, in my view, both the establishment and media corruption. Remember that Trump made that statement when he was running what? The
Apprentice.
Apprentice.
Mhm.
They kept it under wraps. They hid it until he came out and became a Republican candidate.
No, no,
Suddenly
no, no,
it
no.
was unleashed as a weapon.
No, okay, no, no, that's not the
Okay,
truth.
tell me, when was it released?
No, no. What I mean by that is that it's not about the timing. It's
Mhm.
just that it's a standard statement in Hollywood.
What's the standard statement?
What I mean is people say things like that, like men, when they, not everybody, but
Okay, but
men,
but what I'm saying to you is that they could have released it the time
but
he
they,
said
they,
it,
they
and
won't release it.
okay, and stopped his show, right?
No, they
But
won't. No, they won't stop his show. Why?
okay, they
No,
will
no.
stop
Do
the
you think?
show
Do you think that
because
there's? Oh, hold on.
women would
Do you think that
women.
there's a Washington, Bill
Okay.
Cosby? That
Mhm.
let me remove Denzel Washington, Bill
Yeah,
Cosby. There are
because
people who
yeah,
speak that way in
yes,
Hollywood.
yes.
You're not going to cancel their show because they talk that
No,
way.
no, but
But
if the atmosphere, I think, of the time when the program was running, if it was said, if the producer that Trump said that to came out and said, "This is what Trump said to me," that he would come out and grab a woman.
no, that wasn't that
I,
time.
I,
That
I,
was
I think a lot of women would will
no,
revolt against the show, and the show
no,
might have been cancelled.
no.
But at any rate, I expected somebody to be so revolted that
No,
they
not
would
in
have.
Hollywood. Not in Hollywood. No, no, no.
Okay, so if now so now you are making you're arguing against your point. So if Trump
What is?
could say that and you say that that's how they talk in Hollywood, then what he said is not extraordinary then.
No. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's for
Okay,
someone who is in Hollywood, okay?
okay,
But
okay.
he's coming to the political arena,
Yes. And
okay?
then they release it as a
Yeah,
weapon.
as part of when you move
His
to no,
yeah.
seriously,
Yeah.
like what are you writing today, okay? If you
Mm-hmm.
go into political, if it's in this country, you go into
Mm-hmm.
political space,
Mm-hmm.
they are going to read articles you wrote 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they will bring it up for you to answer and explain how you arrive at this kind of conclusion and
Mm-hmm.
thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's legitimate. I'm not the point I'm making is that I understand the context where it's like Jay-Z
Mm-hmm.
and P. Diddy. They were given the keys of cities all over
Mm-hmm.
America. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that people didn't know what they were doing, but because they were operating in that world, in that
Mm-hmm.
field, and that was what was going on. It wasn't right. It was, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody was. It was at that time. It wasn't an issue.
Mm-hmm.
If they are going to go over to political arena, those
Mm-hmm.
things will come out before. If it didn't come out now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's how
Yeah,
it is.
well, yeah, that makes sense. But the point though is, I hope you and I can agree that several people. So let me cite one example. Talking about norms, you remember the year Trump gave a State of the Union address, and at the end of it, Nancy Pelosi on world television tore up his speech. That has never happened in American history. Okay? Had it happened in the past, on both sides, people would have been outraged. But she did it to Trump and got away with it. Remember,
What
Trump,
will have hold on. What will have happened to her?
she's from San Francisco. She will continue to win elections. But at least people from her own party will say this is an American tradition. You do not tear up the president's speech, whether you like the president or not, whether you like what he said or not.
But
Because
but
tomorrow,
let's end this because I'm thinking about our
mhm,
viewers. Most
yeah,
of them may not be. But
yeah.
let me explain how that's a good
I'm,
example.
I'm just I'm just speaking to
Yeah,
the norms that we
yeah. I
say
like
have
what
been
you pointed
broken.
out. I like what you pointed out.
Mhm,
I'm not making. Of course, I don't think it's necessary that
mhm,
Nancy Pelosi should do that or should have done that. But let me tell you an example of why I'm afraid for America, because I'm
mhm,
not just interested in just what Trump is going to do,
mhm,
but how the destruction of norms
mhm,
becomes a recurring decimal.
mhm,
So look at what happened. So Trump to the Democrats
mhm.
got away with January what 6th?
6.
Yeah, got away with so many things that they wanted to get him to answer to. Okay,
Mhm, mhm,
and now Biden Biden did something that people did not understand, that it was a desperate move. It scared me more than anything Trump had ever done, which
mhm.
was to pardon his son.
Did you expect that he would not pardon his son?
Oh yeah,
No, no, no. I knew he was going to pardon his
no,
son.
no, no,
It
no, no,
would have been stupid of him not to pardon his son.
no.
The,
It's
the
not
only
that
thing he did,
it's wrong.
the only thing he did wrong. No, listen. First of all, if Kamala Harris had won the election, he would take the high ground, knowing, being assured that Kamala will pardon the son. Right? There is no responsible father who has the presidential power who will say to the son, "Go to jail." I'm telling you that
I will not do that.
Rudolph, you pardon your son, or you'll be an irresponsible father.
No, no,
The
I
only
don't
thing,
think so. I don't think so.
the only thing he did wrong was that he went on the record several times, and his officials went on the record, and they campaigned on it, saying, "Oh, he's a better man. He believes in the rule of law." I knew when he was saying that his son would not spend a second in jail. I knew that. I
Okay.
was not
So
surprised at all.
what this is how I interpreted it.
Mhm.
I didn't think that Biden would do that. But this is how I interpreted what he did. He lost hope in America.
Ah, come on,
No, this
come on.
that may be
No, he
his
did
book.
not do soap in
Maybe
America.
his book will explain this. This is what I mean by that. This is what I
I,
mean. This is what
yeah.
I mean. I
Mhm.
think Biden felt the country is going to hell anyway. So we might as well all be mad. Because I thought it was crazy for him to pardon his son
Okay.
after saying he will not pardon him.
Okay,
I mean,
Rudolph.
it's not even his.
Rudolph, do
Yeah,
you know
that's
that? Do you know that the more serious crimes on that tape, on that computer, were let, were allowed that the statute of limitation ran out, the tax things? Do you know Anthony Babalinsky? Do you know of Anthony Babalinsky?
no, no.
Okay, that's because perhaps the media is not are not telling us the scale of corruption. Anthony Babalinsky was a man chosen by the Bidens to run a company that was going to receive money from a Chinese energy company.
Oh, I've heard about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and on that computer there is a breakdown of the shares of the company, the money they brought, and they said 10% for the big man. Anthony Babalinsky went to Congress and testified that Biden was a big man. So I can tell you, it did not make sense that Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company, was paying Hunter Biden 50 to $80,000 a month for, I think, more than a year. Okay, if they were, and Biden initially said, "I never met any of his business associates." It has turned out that he met so many of his business associates. Then he says, "Oh, my son did nothing wrong." So the crazy thing actually is you saw the unprecedented level of his forgiveness for 10 years, 2014 to 2022, right? Okay. But he's placed his son in jeopardy because having been forgiven, he's now duty bound. He can no longer claim the fifth. So when he arrives in Congress, because he will be summoned to testify, if they ask him questions about his father's culpability in this corruption scheme, because it's a larger corruption scheme. The Chinese were not giving money to Hunter because they saw a wizard of a businessman. They were not, the Ukrainians were not giving money to Hunter outside of his father. So the question is, did Joe Biden benefit? And remember that Joe Biden's brother was also getting contracts in different parts of the world, including in Iraq, to do reconstruction. So were they getting this because they were on their own legitimate businessmen, or were they getting it as a kind of kickback to Biden? That's so. Please, you seem to believe that Biden is such a noble politician, far more noble
No.
than
I
I
believe.
don't believe it.
No, no. I believe. No, no. This is what I
So when
believe.
you say that he lost faith in America or
Yeah.
lost, no, I don't believe it.
This is what I believe. This is what I
Yeah.
believe. Eh? I
Okay.
believe that
Hmm.
he was still confined
Hmm.
within the norms of the country's ideal and the presidential system. Okay,
Uh-huh.
that he would hope,
You know, Bill
even
Clinton
if
pardoned his brother.
yeah,
You know that Bill Clinton pardoned his brother, right? And
yes,
you
yes,
know that Trump pardoned his father-in-law.
yeah, but not before they served time in whatever the
Yeah,
consequence of
but
what
it
they did.
depends. It
Yeah,
depends. You
but
know.
this one is before, and
Hmm.
even to the point that you cannot
Yes.
bring further charges. So that's what I'm saying. I'm
Yes.
saying that what happened in this case, I may
Hmm.
be wrong, but
Hmm.
I'm reading it that he felt, and I know a lot of people felt that way, that we have all agreed that we are going to go to hell. America is go. This is how some people feel. No, that America is going to. So let's all go there.
Yes.
Okay. So
No.
if let me
Okay.
say one last thing. One last thing
Yes,
about
please.
Trump. I
Yeah.
don't want to make this about Trump because
Yeah.
we are an audience are Nigerians and also yeah. But the last thing about Trump is looking at this Matt Gaetz, and which is back to what my concerns are about the character Trump, who would have been the Attorney General of the Federation. What it tells you, apart from people say it and walk away, that it tells you something about Trump's decision making. No, it's more than that. You know, it tells you that either he did not care to know who he wants to appoint the Attorney General of the Federation, or he knows he wants someone who is as damaged as he is and wants that kind of person because they will do what he wants them to do, being that he has something terrible on them that they will, which is what people say about some leaders in Africa, that the intelligence agencies around the world would rather pick someone who is compromised in Africa so that they will do what they want them to do.
Yeah.
But it's scared. That's why I'm afraid about when it comes to Trump. One is that there's nobody who could talk him out of it. He did not know, or he knew and didn't care.
But he must have known. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I can
Yeah.
give him the benefit of the doubt. But these three, there's none of them that is good. The one that he knew and still wanted him, two that he did not know and didn't care to know, and three that there was nobody.
Who could talk him out of it?
These three things, it will repeat itself in other ways, in other areas, in other things, and it may be a life or death situation for a lot of people or for the country,
Yeah.
the direction of the country. So and you made one other thing I want to point out. You pointed at people liking him for certain things. It doesn't mean that they are right. The fact that people like you for certain things. If you announce today that you are going to take over from Simon Ekpa as the leader of the Biafrans, people will like you. But does that make it, the fact that you are liked, does that make everything right about people liking you?
No. The argument I was making simply is not the rightness of it. It's wrong for Trump to point to the media and say these are the enemies, right? But I'm also, because you pointed to that as Trump breaking the norm. And all I wanted, because I think as a person, I go for full accounting. All I want to put on the table is that so many different personalities and institutions in this country have been breaking the norms, and that breaking of norms intensified in the Trump years. Okay, whether it's Nancy Pelosi tearing up the State of the Union address that's on world television just given by the president, or whether it's 51 intelligence officials signing a statement that they know to be false in order to affect the outcome of an election, or whether it's the media piling on that there's a collusion between Trump and Russia that put him in office and so on. So when institutions begin to break norms in order to affect things, then you find somebody like Trump. And there are people who would, I don't think that they Mitt Romney, even if that whole thing had been done to him, would have pointed to the media and said they're
No, he wouldn't.
But Trump is the kind of person who says, hey, you're doing this, you're the enemy. And what I'm saying is that for some of his supporters, that resonates because they've seen this pattern. They've seen.
But also it's a dangerous thing. So
Oh, it is dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Rudolph, it is dangerous. But I want you to include in your analysis of America's decline.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The
We
fact
all
that
we
the
know that.
media knowingly lend themselves to misleading American people. Okay, so in the end, Trump pointed in the media and saying bad people. It's easy to ameliorate that. It's easy. Tomorrow, who knows how long Trump is going to be around? When he's gone, I don't think another politician like him will emerge.
No,
But
no, but once
but,
you
but
break
if the
some
media,
norms, once you
no,
break some norms.
but the media have been breaking the norms.
No,
That's what
I
that's
know. But
not the point that I'm
when it
making.
comes to when a president
Okay,
stands
let
in
me.
front.
Yeah, I'm sorry because I'm interviewing you, right?
Oh, sorry.
But you and I have had informal conversations about this, so that's why I decided to play this devil's advocate, right? But I really believed. I used to be a believer in whatever I saw on television. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So when I was hearing that Trump colluded with Russia, I believed it until a political scientist who is a senior American political scientist who was a Hillary supporter told me that there was no iota of evidence. So I began to look at other places. And I told you, I spoke to you about Trump trying to release classified information and he was talked out of it. In the end, he released the classified information. But many people do not go to read these things. Do you know that a lot of former intelligence officials in this country who would appear on television during the Russia collusion thing and say, yeah, there is overwhelming evidence. They went to see the Intelligence Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, which is a class of, they take the, they will go and testify and they will be asked, do you see any evidence? Have you seen any evidence of Trump colluding with the Russians? They will say no. Some of them that same night, after testifying truthfully, will go on TV where they can't go to jail for lying and say, yeah, the evidence is overwhelming. Do you understand? So what I'm saying to you is that people who have information, it's like COVID came, right? There is a medical scientist, Anderson, is a Chris Anderson, okay, is his name. He wrote an email to another colleague saying that he has studied the COVID, the morphology, the structure of the COVID, that there is a furin cleavage site which does not occur in nature. That it suggests that it came from nature. 2 days later, this same scientist is part of a group put together, and they wrote a piece that was published in a scientific journal saying that this thing clearly came from nature and that anybody who suggests it might have leaked from the lab is a conspiracy theorist. On the basis of this tendentious, meretricious contraption, any scientist, however reputable they were, who suggested that this could have come to nature was called a conspiracy theorist, was banished from speaking on social media. Okay, the same man, he knew, he did not believe what he signed his thing to. So I'm saying to you that let's not. So what Trump is doing is dangerous, but I'm saying let's not focus on Trump in isolation of the institutions
All right. Yeah, I
that
agree.
are breaking norms and that are
I agree.
lying to us on a daily
I
basis.
agree. I don't think that America is not perfect and is having problems across the board. So,
Yeah.
um, and let's hope that it will last another 50 years at the top. But who knows? Let me
Yeah.
show you this
Okay.
video. Just quick rest.
Quick video, and then we'll call
Yeah,
it. We'll call it
yeah. I
a
know.
day.
So
Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. Don't stop, don't stop.
Oh my gosh.
The most dangerous man on television. The what? Yeah.
so
Oh my gosh.
this is the most dangerous man on television. What do you
He,
mean by that?
that guy is. I think you and he are cut from the same cloth. I admire him in the same way that I admire you for the willingness to leave it all out there, to speak intrepidly, to speak fearlessly, to, as they say, call, as Americans will say, to call balls and strikes. So it was such a delight. I went to visit a friend, and he knew that I admired Rufai, and Rufai was there waiting for me. And so that was a moment when I walked in and we saw each other, and spontaneously broke into a dance, and it was really wonderful. I hope you don't have a picture or a video of me eating in your house, because I know
No,
that
no,
that,
no, no.
that, that, that
I don't.
that's the next thing that you're going to
No,
produce
no,
to,
no, no, no,
to
no.
embarrass me.
But
Remember, I'm running the show.
I wanted to. There's another video.
There's another
Did you
video.
watch the encounter with there was an incident that happened on their show recently. Did you watch it, where Ruben had to scold the lady Ope? Did you watch it?
No.
Okay, no need. You won't be able to respond unless it was during the debate about whether Igbo people were selling land to other people, and there were feedback
in Igbo land.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Then let me leave that because you didn't see that. But let's look at this picture and see whether not picture video.
Oh yeah, that's oh yeah.
Is that real?
Of course. Are you kidding? That's me. Michael Jordan, Okey Ndibe.
Okay.
Come on. It's not real.
Rudolph, I was drafted in the NBA. So you're laughing. You're breaking norms right here.
No, was that AI or something?
Rudolph Okonkwo, you don't know anything about me, do you?
Were you able to jump that high?
Rudolph Okonkwo.
No,
Rudolph.
I really want to be sure that it was you that jumped.
Yeah. Up until a few years ago, I used to challenge my students every end of semester. I'll challenge any student to come out to the field, and I'll do 100-meter dash with them, and I would beat my students. I was a star, a track and field star in secondary school, and because I've stayed in shape, more or less, unlike you, I don't eat McDonald's.
Number 5.
Yes, number 5. I watch what I eat. I love to cook. I love your wife's food. You know that whenever your wife calls, I show up to eat. But so one year, I had a student who was one of the younger sons of Hugh Hefner, the publisher of Playboy magazine. So I challenged my students at the end of the semester to a race, and he was the only person who agreed to come out. So we ran the first one. I beat him, and he was so embarrassed that he asked for an instant replay. So I increased the gap. So at the end of that semester, he transferred to another college, university in California, and the student newspaper went and wrote that Professor Okey Ndibe humiliated. I'm not going to mention his name, Hefner, and that he left the college. Of course, he left for other reasons. And so here I was now boasting about it. And so the next semester, I had 2 students who were on the school's track and field team. So when I told the story with some pride, they then challenged me to go out to the field and race. So we did the first one, and they beat me slightly. And so I was encouraged. I said, "Oh, it was close. So maybe I can ask for a rematch, and I'll narrow or even beat them." So I asked for a rematch, and these guys just were merciless. They increased the gap. So I didn't know they were showing mercy the first time. So that was the last time I challenged my students to a race. But yeah, so I can still leave the ground a little bit, and I have a son. That's the guy in that picture. He actually has a huge following. He does On Thanksgiving, he did a video of the family. I wasn't there because I was dropping one of the elderly women who came for my mother-in-law's party. But he gathered all his uncles and aunts who had come for the event to do jumps. Some people will rise only this high off the ground. Some people couldn't even rise. So I wasn't there, so you had to touch, hit something. And I think about more than 10 million people have seen that video. Yeah. So some of his videos have up to 15 million people around the world seeing them on TikTok and on Instagram and all. So his handle is Jumps by Chi, Jumps by CHI, Chi.
Wow.
His name is Chidebe. Yeah. So one day I said to him, let me take you out and go and teach you a few tricks. And that was me soaring in the air, man.
All right. Thank you so much.
So it's been such a delight. We were supposed to talk for 90 minutes.
Yes.
Our version of 90 minutes is almost 4 hours. So it's been such a delight to speak about Nigeria and then to speak about our second home, America. And Rudolph, I thank you for the opportunity. When I told Rudolph that I was going to interview him,
I was waiting.
He didn't believe it. And so we talked at least a dozen times, and I kept saying, I'm going to be asking you questions. He said, oh, I know when you sit down, you start taking questions. I said, nope, I'm going to be the one asking questions. And at some point, he said, oh, my wife said it's not possible. There's no way you're going to sit down and ask me questions. So please tell your wife that I surprised you.
She'll watch this. This will be the first show she will watch.
Yeah.
The first 90 minutes she will watch. But thank you so much. And maybe we do this with Wem next. I want
Absolutely. Wem should interview you again.
I
right?
like the relaxed. No, just relax.
Just the conversational. Yes.
That wouldn't. I think there's a pressure that we see when the audience are part of that conversation. Both time and everything.
Yeah. I enjoy it. I enjoy it.
I think it was better than I thought. I was scared really at the beginning, but I think I'm okay.
So when next I come in, when it's my turn to be interviewed, to be your guest, I would like the audience to be part of the conversation. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, man. So enjoy your number 5. Tomorrow I'm gonna enjoy my okwa.
Okay. Wow. All right. Take care.
All right. You too, man.
Bye.
Good night.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, come on. The kid should eat it half out.